If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 1, The Silent Scrapper. 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and the Texas heat still hadn't broken. Tom Mercer's pickup rattled into the driveway, trailing a cloud of dust that glowed amber in the porch light before settling back onto the gravel. He killed the engine and sat there for a moment, letting the AC gasp its last breath before dying with the ignition. Through the windshield, he could see the living room window lamp on, TV flickering, Lisa's silhouette on the couch. He grabbed his thermos off the passenger seat and climbed out. The air hit him like opening an oven door. Even at this hour, Crestfield held onto its heat the way a dog holds a bone, stubborn and unreasonable. Inside, the house smelled like pot roast. Good sign. But the dining table told a different story, plates set for three, food covered in foil, everything untouched. Lisa was on the couch with the TV muted, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up when the screen door slapped shut behind him. Hey! Tom dropped his keys on the counter and peeled off his work jacket, a canvas Carhartt stiff with machine oil that Lisa had given up trying to wash. You haven't eaten. Where's Ryan? He sat down beside her, slipping an arm around her shoulders. She was warm and tense, the way she got when she'd been stewing on something for a while. Les, where's the kid? She finally looked at him, and the expression on her face wasn't anger. It was something closer to fear. Your son, she said, leaning into the word your like it was evidence in a trial, is still in that workshop. I've called him 3 times. 3. He won't come in, won't eat, won't even acknowledge that I exist. He's been in there since I got home at 5, and for all I know he was in there before that. All right, let me go. Tom. She caught his arm before he could stand. Sit down for a second. He sat. Lisa set her phone face down on the cushion and turned to face him. In the blue-white light of the muted television, the lines around her eyes looked deeper than he remembered. Do you think he's okay? She asked. I mean really, truly okay. He's always been different from other kids. You know that. I've been trying not to make a big deal out of it, but... Different how? Tom kept his voice even, the way he did when a customer at the shop was working up to a complaint. Honey, the kid is a genius. An actual, honest-to-God genius. You say different like it's a disease. That's not what I... How many parents in this town, in this whole county, have a 14-year-old who already finished high school? Not just finished it. Finished it first. Valedictorian since 8th grade, top scores in everything, and now he's running his own engineering project in our backyard. Tom squeezed her hand. Once his SAT scores come back, he's going to have his pick of schools. MIT, Caltech, Stanford, wherever he wants to go. He'll probably get a full ride. I know all that. You're sitting here worrying when half the neighborhood would trade their kids for ours without thinking twice. Lisa pulled her hand away. Not roughly, but deliberately. The way she did when she wanted him to understand that agreeing with her wasn't the same as listening to her. Have you actually looked at what he's building in there? Tom went quiet. He says it's a neural interface, Lisa continued, her voice dropping like she was sharing a diagnosis. Connecting a person's nervous system directly to a machine. Controlling it with your thoughts. Tom, machines don't have nerves. I asked him to explain it and he started talking about synaptic signal transduction and I literally did not understand a single word. She looked toward the back window, where the workshop's corrugated silhouette blocked out the stars. What if he's wrong? What if this whole thing is I don't know? What if he's been watching too much anime and he's convinced himself he can do something impossible? He's 14. 14-year-olds are supposed to be wrong about things. That's how you learn. But we've put $200,000 into this, Tom. $200,000 we can't get back, based on something our teenage son says will work, and I swear to God, if this is because of those Japanese robot cartoons. Okay. Tom raised both hands. Okay. Let me go talk to him. Tom. I'll look at what he's doing. I'll actually look. And then we'll talk about it. All right. Lisa studied him for a long moment, then exhaled through her nose and stood up. Fine. I'll heat the plates. Tom stepped out the back door into the warm, cricket-loud darkness. The workshop loomed at the far end of the property, impossible to miss, even at night. It was a massive corrugated steel structure, nearly 50 feet tall at its peak, with walls of galvanized sheet metal that pinged and ticked as they cooled from the day's heat. One wall had been cut and fitted with a rolling industrial door wide enough to drive a truck through, a smaller access door was set into the wall beside it. From the outside, the thing looked like a small airplane hangar that had lost a fight with a tornado and settled in central Texas to quietly rust. Crestfield was that kind of place. A few thousand people spread along two main roads, a hardware store that doubled as the post office, a Dairy Queen that served as the town's unofficial community center, and enough open land that nobody questioned what you built on your own property. The Mercer's lot sat at the edge of town where the last residential street dissolved into ranchland, 5 acres of scrub grass, mesquite trees, and personal freedom. Tom crossed the yard in the dark, his boots crunching on the dry grass. The smaller access door was cracked open, a bar of fluorescent light cutting across the ground. No welding sounds. That was unusual. Most nights, the workshop sang with the buzz and spit of Ryan's arc welder, a sound Tom had gotten so used to that its absence felt like a missed heartbeat. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The first thing he noticed was the silence. The workshop's fluorescent overheads cast a flat, blue-white light over everything, humming faintly, but beyond that nothing. No grinder, no welder, no power tools. Just the residual tick of cooling metal and the distant chirp of crickets through the walls. Ryan was sitting in a rolling chair near the center of the concrete floor, his back to the door. Something was on his head, a helmet, homemade by the look of it, bristling with small sensors and trailing a bundle of cables that ran across the floor and disappeared into the shadows at the far end of the workshop. Both his hands were pushed into heavy-looking gloves, also cabled, and his posture had the absolute stillness of someone concentrating very hard on something invisible. Tom's eyes followed the cables. They ran 50 feet across the floor like a root system, converging on the thing that dominated the far half of the workshop. And even after months of watching his son build it, even after writing check after check to pay for its components, the sight of it still made Tom's breath catch. Scrapper. It lay on its back like a felled colossus. Nearly 40 feet of skeletal steel frame humanoid, roughly, the way a gorilla is roughly humanoid, its torso a lattice of interlocking struts and I-beams, its limbs articulated with joints the size of truck tires. Cables threaded through it like veins through muscle, some bundled into neat conduits, others looping in controlled chaos across actuator housings and servo mounts. Under the fluorescent lights, the bare metal had a brutal, unfinished beauty to it, like a cathedral caught mid-construction, all bones and intent and nothing to hide behind. This was his son's project. His obsession. The thing that had eaten their savings and most of Tom's goodwill at the bank. Ryan said the finished version would stand about 40 feet tall and weigh over 200 tons. Looking at the skeleton, Tom believed it. Even without armor plating, without a skin, without whatever coating of paint and polish would eventually make it look like the concept art Ryan had pinned to his bedroom wall, the thing was massive. It filled the back half of the workshop like a body in a coffin. And this was why Tom kept writing checks. Not because he understood the engineering. He didn't. Not because he believed, fully and without reservation, that a 14-year-old could build a functioning mech suit in a backyard shop in Texas. He had his doubts, same as Lisa. But the skeleton was real. The fabrication was real. The joints, the servo mounts, the electrical systems, they existed. His son had designed them, sourced the materials, cut and welded and assembled them over the course of years. Whatever else happened, whatever Ryan's neural interface did or didn't do, the ability that skeleton represented was extraordinary. Tom had been a machinist for 23 years. He knew what skilled fabrication looked like. And what his son had built was beyond anything Tom had ever seen from someone twice Ryan's age with 10 times his resources. Keep feeding that brain. Keep supporting the work. Maybe someday the Mercer name would mean something more than a small-town machining shop. Hey, bud. Tom walked closer, keeping his voice casual. Your mom's got dinner waiting. Come on in, it's getting late. You finished your exams, whatever this is can wait until. He stopped. Ryan had spread the fingers of his right hand. Slowly, deliberately. Then he closed them into a fist. Tom heard it before he understood it, a deep, grinding mechanical groan from the far end of the workshop. Metal shifting against metal. Something enormous flexing. He looked at Scrapper. Its right hand, 3 massive steel fingers, each one longer than Tom was tall, arranged around a palm the size of a card table, had closed into a fist. Tom blinked. I'm tired, he thought. Long day. Eyes are playing tricks. Ryan opened his hand. Scrapper's fingers uncurled. Slowly, smoothly, with a sound like a bridge stretching in the heat. Tom felt something cold settle at the base of his spine. Not fear, exactly. Something older. The feeling a person gets when the world shifts slightly on its axis and reveals, just for a second, that it's much bigger and stranger than they thought. He covered the remaining distance to Ryan's chair in 3 quick strides, standing right behind his son, eyes locked on the gloved hands. Ryan made a fist. 40 feet away, Scrapper's hand closed. Ryan spread his fingers. Scrapper opened. Fist. Open. Fist. Open. Every movement mirrored. 0 delay. The massive 3-fingered hand tracking Ryan's gestures like a shadow if shadows were made of steel and weighed more than a sedan. Tom realized his mouth was open. He closed it. Swallowed. Ryan, he said, and his voice came out rougher than he intended. Is this did you? Hey, Dad. Ryan pulled off the sensor gloves and swiveled around in his chair. 14 years old, dark hair plastered to his forehead from the helmet, and wearing the kind of grin that Tom hadn't seen since the kid was 5 and discovered he could take apart the toaster and put it back together. Calm. Confident. Like he'd been waiting for someone to walk in on exactly this moment. It works. Tom managed. Pretty much. Ryan set the gloves down on the workbench with a care that suggested they were worth more than everything else in the building combined. Got the synchronization dialed in tonight. The neural link is stable, latency's negligible, signal degradation is within acceptable parameters. One more calibration test tomorrow and the basic system is fully operational. Tom stared at Scrapper's hand, now motionless in the shadows, and tried to reconcile what he'd just seen with everything he understood about how the world worked. He failed. Can I? He gestured at the gloves on the bench. Let me try. Just for a second. Ryan hesitated. The grin dimmed slightly. Better not, Dad. The neural link puts a lot of pressure on your nervous system. It's kind of like. He searched for an analogy. You know that feeling when you dive too deep in a pool and your ears start to hurt? Imagine that, but it's your entire brain. If someone's nervous system can't handle the load, things can go wrong fast. Seizures, nerve damage. It's not something I want to risk. Tom's concern pivoted instantly. And you can handle it. It's easier on younger brains, more neural plasticity. Plus this is a single pilot rig, so the cognitive load is a fraction of what a full-scale system would demand. I'm fine, Dad. Really? You'd tell me if you weren't. I'd tell you. Tom held his son's eyes for a beat, looking for the lie. He didn't find one, which either meant Ryan was telling the truth or was a better liar than Tom gave him credit for. Both options seemed plausible. All right, Tom said, letting out a long breath. Come eat. They walked back across the dark yard together, Tom stealing one last glance at the workshop's silhouette against the sky. Inside, Lisa had the plates reheated and waiting. She took one look at Tom's face and knew something had changed, but Ryan was already sliding into his chair and reaching for the pot roast, and the questions she clearly wanted to ask got buried under the comfortable rhythms of a family dinner. Ryan ate quickly, let his mom fuss, deflected her probing with the practiced ease of someone who'd been managing adults since before he could ride a bike, and excused himself for a shower. 20 minutes later, he was lying on his bed in the dark, hair still damp, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet. His parents had gone to their room. The AC hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked twice and gave up. System, Ryan thought, directing the word inward toward the cold, constant presence that occupied a space in his mind that hadn't existed before he was born into this world. Show me the progress on the next project. The response came immediately, machine-precise and emotionless, a voice that existed only inside his skull. Next project, research progress at 9%. Project details and current results will be revealed at 10%. Continue accumulating summon points to accelerate research. 9%. Same as last month. Same as the month before that. Ryan exhaled slowly. Reminder, to increase project research speed, the host should accumulate additional summon points. Yeah, I'm aware. Believe me. Summon points. The system's currency, and the single most elegant bottleneck Ryan had ever encountered. The concept was simple, every time someone in the world mentioned him by name specifically meaning him, Ryan Mercer, not some other guy who happened to share the name, the system's counter ticked up by 1. The more points he accumulated, the faster the system's internal R&D progressed. The language didn't matter. English, Spanish, Mandarin, Swahili. If someone on the other side of the planet said his name and meant him, the point counted. And the system had teeth. Hard rules, zero flexibility. Ryan was absolutely, categorically forbidden from gaming the mechanic. No paying people to say his name. No hinting. No running bots. No viral campaigns designed to artificially inflate the count. Every mention had to be organic, someone genuinely talking about him, to someone else, because they wanted to. The system would know the difference. Ryan had tested that boundary exactly once, at age 6, when he'd tried to get a kindergarten classmate to repeat his name 10 times in a row for a cookie. The system had locked him out for a week. He hadn't tried again. So the path was clear: if brutal, become famous. Become the kind of famous where strangers talk about you at dinner tables and on morning shows and in line at the grocery store. Do something so extraordinary that your name becomes a thing people say, not just a thing they read on a screen. Tomorrow, Ryan thought, picking up his phone from the nightstand. Tomorrow, Scrapper stands up and walks. And then the whole country is going to learn my name. He tapped out a text to Chloe. Come over first thing tomorrow. Bring your camera. We're shooting something big. 3 dots appeared. Then. K. Ryan smiled. Set the phone down. Closed his eyes. He'd been born for the second time 14 years ago, screaming and confused, in a hospital in Crestfield, Texas. Before that, before the blinding white and the cold and the sudden, terrible smallness of a newborn body, he'd been someone else. Somewhere else. A parallel Earth, similar to this one in most ways, different in a few important ones. He'd lived a full life there, or most of one, until a car accident on a rainy highway had ended things with mechanical abruptness. And then he was here. A baby with an adult's memories crammed into a brain the size of a grapefruit, blinking at a world he didn't recognize, carrying in his mind the blueprints of technologies that this Earth hadn't dreamed of yet. The system had come with him. Hitched a ride across whatever gap existed between one reality and another. It called itself the Movie Technology R&D System, and its function was as specific as its name: it could take any technology depicted in a movie Ryan remembered from his previous life and develop a real, buildable version. The research took time, sometimes months, sometimes years, sometimes apparently decades, but the end result was genuine, functional technology. Not a prop. Not a simulation. The real thing. Scrapper was the proof of concept. The system's first project, delivered as a starter freebie, complete schematics for a mech based on the one Amara Namani had built from scrapyard parts in Pacific Rim, Uprising. A small mech, by Jaeger standards. A toy, almost. But a toy that could stand and walk and respond to a pilot's neural commands in real time, which put it roughly 40 years ahead of anything the world's best robotics labs had produced. The second project had been running since the day Ryan was born. 14 years of slow, grinding background research, currently stuck at 9% because there simply weren't enough people in the world saying his name on a daily basis to move the needle. That was about to change. Ryan lay in the dark, listening to the house settle, and thought about tomorrow. About Scrapper rising from the workshop floor. About cameras and upload speeds and the precise, calculated chain reaction that would turn a teenager in a Texas backyard into the most talked about person in America. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, he dreamed of steel giants standing in fields of broken concrete. Chapter 2, Scrapper Stands. Ryan was up before the sun cleared the tree line. He'd barely slept 4, maybe 5 hours of shallow rest punctuated by dreams he couldn't quite remember but that left him wired with a low, electric hum that no amount of cold water to the face could shake. By the time he came downstairs, the house was already empty. 2 mugs in the sink, a note on the fridge in Lisa's handwriting, leftover pot roast in the blue container, eat it, and the particular silence of parents who'd already left for the shop. He ate a bowl of cereal standing at the counter, staring out the kitchen window at the workshop. Waiting. The doorbell rang at 8 sharp. Chloe Parker stood on the porch squinting against the glare, a canvas camera bag over one shoulder and a half-finished Dr. Pepper in her free hand. 17, 10, brown hair in a ponytail already coming loose, wearing cutoffs and a faded t-shirt from some 5K fun run she'd almost certainly never participated in. She looked like she'd been awake for approximately 9 minutes. All right, hotshot. She stepped past him without waiting for an invitation, standard procedure since she was 11. What's the emergency? Please tell me this isn't another welding marathon, because the last time I filmed you grinding a seam for 45 minutes, my retention graph looked like someone falling off a cliff. No welding. She stopped in the hallway and turned around. No welding. Today we're filming Scrapper's first field test. Chloe's hand stopped halfway to her Dr. Pepper. She set the can down on the hallway table without drinking. A test, she said carefully. Like a moving test. Like a standing up and walking across the room test. Chloe stared at him for a long beat. When they were kids, Ryan had once convinced her their elementary school was built on top of a Civil War ammunition dump and spent an entire afternoon detecting ordnance with a metal detector rigged from a coat hanger and a transistor radio. She'd believed him for 3 days. She'd also sworn, publicly and repeatedly, to never believe anything he said again. If this is a prank, she said, pulling her camera from the bag, I will literally murder you and hide your body inside that robot. Forensics won't find you. They'll think you're a structural component. Get your tripod set up. She did. Checked the viewfinder, adjusted the angle to capture Scrapper's full length where it lay on the concrete, and gave Ryan a thumbs up. Recording. Ryan positioned himself in front of the camera, a heavy industrial power cable slung over his shoulder. Behind him, Scrapper lay in the half-light like something sleeping. I'm Ryan Mercer. Today's a big day. My mech, Scrapper, is ready for its first real field test. He let a beat of silence land. I know most of you think I've been talking a big game for 2 years. Well. Eyes open. He turned, hauled the cable to Scrapper's ankle, and plugged it into the custom power coupling with a heavy mechanical chunk. Then he hit the generator. The diesel unit bellowed to life. The sound filled the workshop like a living thing, a throb Ryan felt in his molars. Here was the ugly truth about Scrapper. Inside Ryan's head lived the complete specs for a mech that ran on a plasma reactor, used holographic displays, and operated autonomously for weeks. He had all of it. He could build none of it. Plasma containment needed exotic materials that didn't exist yet. The holographic system required components no factory on Earth currently produced. So he'd done what any engineer would do, stripped the design down to what he could actually fabricate with 200 grand in a backyard shop. The plasma reactor became this diesel generator and a fat cable. The holographic cockpit became a refurbished touch screen off eBay. It was like taking a wild stallion and staking it to a post. Scrapper could move, but only as far as its leash allowed. The one genuinely advanced system he'd managed to build was the neural link, and even that had taken 3 years. One subsystem. 3 years. Already decades ahead of anything any lab on Earth had produced. Everything else was duct tape and diesel. Indicator lights began cascading across Scrapper's frame, red, green, amber, hundreds of them tracing every major system as it powered up. A new sound rose beneath the generator's rumble. Lower. Deeper. The sound of something very large waking up. Holy crap, Chloe whispered behind the camera. Ryan grabbed a steel ladder, leaned it against Scrapper's torso, and climbed. 30 feet up, the cockpit waited an open cavity in the chest frame with a molded seat, sensor vest, foot pedals, shoulder straps, and the touch screen. No armor, no hatch, no canopy. If he fell from here, the concrete wouldn't be kind. He settled in. Buckled the vest. Locked his feet. Pulled on the gloves. Pressed the activation switch. The neural link engaged, and the world squeezed. The touch screen flooded with data: joint temps, actuator loads, power draw. All green. You alive up there? Chloe's voice drifted up, aiming for casual and landing closer to terrified. It's been 2 minutes. If you died, I'm not explaining it to your mom. I'm good. 10 seconds. Ryan flexed his fingers inside the gloves. Clank. Scrapper's arms lifted off the concrete. Both of them. 20 feet of articulated steel rising in perfect sync with Ryan's hands, servos screaming, cables swaying like tendons. The arms went all the way up, 3-fingered hands reaching toward the ceiling, shadows stretching long and jointed across the floor. Chloe made a sound that wasn't quite a word. She stumbled backward, nearly toppled her tripod, caught it, and looked up. She was a mouse under a dining table. And the table was alive. Oh my God, she said very quietly, and grabbed the camera with shaking hands to reposition. Legs next. Ryan pressed the foot pedals. Scrapper's lower limbs responded, knees bending, feet articulating, the massive legs pistoning up and down with a grinding rhythm that shook loose a rain of dust from the ceiling. The mech was still on its back, so the visual was absurd, a steel giant doing a backstroke, but the weight of each movement, the way the floor shuddered, killed any urge to laugh. Oh my god! Oh my god! Chloe! Get clear! All the way to the wall. Why? Because I'm flipping it over, and you don't want to be under 40 tons of steel when it rolls. She retreated fast. Pressed herself against the far wall near the open door. Green board. Stable power. Ryan initiated the roll. It was like watching a building decide to get up. Boom. Shoulder to concrete. The walls flexed inward, sheet metal buckling and springing back like thunder. A ceiling light swung on its cable, shadows lurching. Boom. A knee down. Concrete cracking in a starburst. Boom. Boom. Hands flat. Weight shifting. The whole workshop groaned as Scrapper heaved itself from horizontal to vertical, one grinding movement at a time. It rose like something out of myth, first to all fours, cables dragging across the floor in hissing arcs. One foot planted, concrete screaming under the load. Then the other. Torso straightening degree by degree, each increment accompanied by the shriek of servos and the pop of settling joints. Standing at full height, Scrapper's head nearly scraped the ceiling. Its shoulders spanned most of the building's width. A pillar of steel and light, rocking slightly on its ankles like a drunk trying to stand straight, humming with contained power. Chloe had backed out through the door entirely. She stood in the yard now, camera aimed up at maximum angle, barely fitting the whole mech in the frame. Ryan looked down from the open cockpit. The ground was very far away. Don't think about it. Check the board. Green. All green. Walk. Crack. The first step didn't crack the concrete, it cratered it. A disc of flooring shattered into fragments, grey dust billowing up around the ankle. Second step. Another crater. Cracks spidering outward, connecting, turning the floor into a jigsaw. Third step. Fourth step. Wall. That was it. 4 strides and the building had nothing left to give. Ryan stood there for a moment, 40 feet up, hands trembling inside the gloves. Not from effort, from the neural load. His head was splitting. Piloting a mech, even for 5 minutes, was like sprinting with his brain. He understood now, viscerally, why the Jaegers needed 2 pilots. One nervous system wasn't built to carry this much machine. He shut it down. Systems died in reverse order. Lights going dark. Scrapper settled with a series of quiet clicks, the sound of metal cooling, and went still. Ryan unbuckled. Pulled off the gloves. Started down the ladder on legs that felt like wet rope. He made it to the floor. Turned around. Chloe was already sprinting toward him. She grabbed his shoulders with both hands, camera swinging from her neck. Do you understand what just happened? Loud. Breathless. Somewhere between laughing and crying. That video, the second it goes live, you're done. Every engineering school in the country is going to fight over you. DARPA. NASA. The Pentagon. Ryan, you built a walking mech in your garage. You're going to be the most famous person in America by tomorrow. Then the questions hit rapid fire, barely a breath between them. How did you do this? When did you finish? How did you go from welding to this without me seeing it? I've been in this workshop 100 times. What's the operating principle? Is it pneumatic? Hydraulic? How does it work? Ryan gave her the flat, patient look of someone who had prepared a deeply unsatisfying answer. Classified. Classified? You're 14. And you're my camera crew, not my engineering team. Go home, cut the footage, get it on every platform by noon. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Simultaneous drop. She stared at him. Opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. You know what you are? You're a cold, heartless machine, and one day they're going to study you in a lab to figure out where your soul was supposed to go. Noon, Chloe. I'm going. God. She turned and stalked toward the door. At the threshold, she spun back. 10 drumsticks? What? You owe me 10 drumsticks for this. And Dr. Pepper. The good kind. Fine. And I want a raise. You don't get paid. Then I want to start getting paid, and then I want a raise. The door banged shut behind her. Ryan stood alone at the foot of the ladder. Scrapper was just a shape now, steel bones and silence. But he could still feel it in his hands. The ghost of the link. The phantom weight of 40 tons answering his thoughts. He cracked his neck, rolled his shoulders, and went inside to wait for the internet to lose its mind. Chapter 3, Upload. Danny Price had just finished the saddest meal of his life. The cafeteria had done something unforgivable to a piece of chicken fried steak, battered it into submission, fried it into leather, and served it under a fluorescent light that made the gravy look like joint compound. He'd eaten every bite, because he was 20 and broke and the meal plan didn't offer refunds. Now he was cutting across campus toward the dorms with a plastic bag of popsicles, sweating against his forearm, tribute for his roommates, extorted under threat of losing his Xbox controller privileges and scrolling YouTube with his free hand. The Texas sun was doing its thing, which at 2 in the afternoon in June meant the sidewalk was hot enough to brand cattle, and the shade under the live oaks only made it worse by giving you hope. He'd been halfway through a brisket video, some guy in Austin with a $10,000 smoker and the calm authority of a man who had figured out life, when the algorithm decided he'd had enough peace. A thumbnail appeared in his feed. Not the usual kind. This one was a still frame he recognized, the concept art for a mech called Scrapper, drawn squat and thick like a mechanical bulldog, one hand ending in a 3-fingered claw and the other in an excavator bucket. He'd seen it before. He'd been seeing it for over a year. Scrapper first test. World's first real mech. Not clickbait. Channel, Ryan Mercer, age 14. Danny stopped scrolling. He knew this kid. Well, he knew the channel. He'd subscribed about a year ago, mostly out of morbid curiosity. Ryan Mercer was a teenager in Texas who claimed he was building a real, functioning mech in his family's workshop. His content was almost entirely welding footage, tight shots of sparks and seams and slowly forming components, narrated by a kid who sounded like he was explaining a homework assignment, with an unseen camera woman who occasionally made sarcastic comments off-screen. The whole thing had become a running joke. Ryan uploaded with the regularity of a metronome, and every single title followed the same format. Day 1 of Welding Scrapper. Day 2 of Welding Scrapper. Day 3 of Welding Scrapper. All the way past day 100. Subscribers had given him the nickname the Welding Kid, and the top comment on every upload was some variation of, Day X of waiting for this thing to actually move. Nobody called him by his actual name, it was always the Welding Kid or that mech guy or just the 14-year-old. The kid clearly wanted people using his real name. It was plastered on the channel, he said it at the start of every video, but the internet had decided on a brand for him, and the internet always won. Danny had always figured it was a talented kid building an art project. An insanely big, insanely expensive art project that would never do anything except sit in a barn and look cool. But this title was different. And the view counter was, Danny squinted at the screen, 400,000 in the first hour. That wasn't normal. That wasn't even close to normal. The welding videos pulled maybe 20 or 30,000 views each. 400,000 in 60 minutes meant either the algorithm was broken or the video was real. Probably clickbait, Danny told himself, and tapped play. The video opened on the concept art Scrapper's reference illustration, the one with the stubby legs and the mismatched hands that made it look more like a piece of construction equipment than a weapon of war. The live chat replay was already scrolling fast. Here we go. The welding arc has been completed. Day 847, he finally stopped welding. I've been hurt before. Cut to Ryan standing under Scrapper's frame, a power cable thick as his arm slung over his shoulder. He looked directly into the camera. I'm Ryan Mercer. Today's a big day. Danny had heard this kid talk 100 times. Same cadence, same calm. But today there was an edge to it. A certainty that hadn't been there before. I know most of you think I've been talking a big game for 2 years. Well. Eyes open. He plugged in the cable. Started a generator. The chat went nuts, a wall of no way, and is this actually happening? And the classic I came here to learn welding techniques that showed up in every single video like clockwork. Danny watched the indicator lights cascade across Scrapper's skeleton. Watched Ryan climb up to the cockpit and strap in. The camera was positioned below, angled up. You could make out the sensor vest, the foot pedals, the gloves, but the details were muddy. Bad angle. Bad lighting. Probably on purpose, some part of Danny's brain noted. Harder to prove it's fake if you can't see the mechanism clearly. Then a title card. White text on black, hand movement test. Danny had half a second to think what kind of test. And then Scrapper's arms rose off the floor. Danny stopped walking. Not slowed down. Stopped. Dead on the sidewalk, one foot still in the air, popsicle bag dripping onto his shoe. Both arms up. In perfect sync with Ryan's hands, visible in a small inset frame in the corner of the screen. No delay. No stutter. 20 feet of steel lifting smooth and steady, servos audible even through his phone's tinny speaker. What the hell, Danny said, out loud, to nobody. He checked the comments. The chat replay had gone nuclear. What did I just watch? Okay, I'm fully awake now. Bro, how? Someone explain. Someone please explain. Hydraulics? Some kind of pneumatic rig. The welding kid actually did it. Nobody had an answer. Just all caps chaos. Title card, leg movement test. No. Not the legs too. The legs moved. Scrapper's massive lower limbs kicked and flexed, knees pistoning, feet articulating with the mech still on its back. It looked like a beetle flipped on its shell, legs cycling in the air. Ridiculous. Absurd. And absolutely, undeniably real, because no CGI artist on Earth would choose to make their fake robot look this stupid. The movement was too heavy, too awkward, too physical. You could hear the concrete vibrating through the camera mic. Danny realized he was standing in direct sunlight. He didn't move. Title card, full body test. The flip. Danny watched it happen with his mouth open. Scrapper rolled shoulder down, knee down, the whole frame rotating with a violence that rattled the workshop walls on screen. The camera shook. Not from bad handling. From the floor literally shaking under the camera woman's feet. And then it stood up. Danny had seen the concept art 100 times. He'd watched welding videos for a year. He knew how big this thing was supposed to be, in theory, in the abstract, in the way you know that Mount Everest is tall because someone told you a number once. But watching it rise, watching the camera pull back as 40 feet of steel skeleton climbed to its full height, filling the frame, then overflowing it, until the camera woman had to retreat outside the building to fit it all in. That was different. That was Danny's chest getting tight and his scalp prickling and the hair on his arms standing up in a way that had nothing to do with the heat. Scrapper walked. 4 steps. Each one a gunshot of cracking concrete, a bloom of grey dust, a visible tremor in the camera. The workshop was too small for it. 4 strides and it hit the wall, a giant trapped in a closet. The video held on the shot for a long moment. Scrapper standing in the dim workshop, indicator lights blazing, cables swaying, head nearly touching the ceiling. Then Ryan shut it down. Climbed out. The girl behind the camera lost her mind. Danny could hear her voice off-screen, half screaming something he couldn't make out, and then the video cut to black. He stood there. The video was over. The autoplay countdown was ticking. A thumbnail for a cooking video was already loading in the queue. Danny stood on the sidewalk, in the sun, and tried to put together a thought more complex than what the fuck. His phone buzzed. Text from his roommate Marcus. Bro, where are you? It's been like 30 minutes. The ice cream situation is getting critical. Danny looked down. The plastic bag in his hand was warm. The popsicles inside were no longer popsicles, they were room temperature sugar water in soggy cardboard sleeves. His shirt was soaked through with sweat, his forehead was dripping, and the back of his neck was going to be sunburned for a week. He'd been standing in direct Texas sunlight for nearly half an hour and hadn't felt a thing. Chapter 4, Going Viral. Danny Price wasn't special. He was one of millions. Chloe had done exactly what Ryan asked: simultaneous upload, noon sharp, every platform. YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Same video, same thumbnail, same title. She'd been rehearsing this deployment for months, long before Scrapper could move, back when Ryan first told her that one day they'd need to hit every platform at the same time like a carpet bombing. She'd thought he was being dramatic. Turns out he'd just been planning. Within 2 hours, the combined view count crossed 15 million. YouTube alone was at 6 million and climbing so fast that every refresh added another 50,000. TikTok had fragmented the video into a dozen clips: the arm raise, the flip, the first step, each one spinning off its own ecosystem of reactions, duets, and stitches. Twitter was doing what Twitter always did, arguing. And underneath all of it, underneath the views and the shares and the comment wars, people were saying his name. Not the welding kid. Not that mech guy. Ryan Mercer. Because it was on the channel name. Because he said it at the start of the video. Because when you share a link and tell your friend you have to watch this, you say the creator's name. When a news anchor picks up a viral story, they say the name. When two co-workers argue about whether it's real or fake at the water cooler, they say the name. Ryan sat at the kitchen table with his phone face down and watched the system counter climb. It had been stuck in the same range for years. A trickle. Background noise from a modest subscriber base who occasionally mentioned him in comments that nobody read aloud. Now the trickle was a river. The number ticked upward in bursts 10, 20, 50 points at a time as the video rippled outward through the internet and into the real world, into conversations and podcasts and group chats and living rooms. The second project's progress bar, frozen at 9% for months, began to move. 9.2. 9.5. 9.8. 10%. Project unlocked. Details now available. Ryan's phone rang before he could check. Chloe's name on the screen. He picked up and pulled the phone 6 inches from his ear, which turned out to be the right call. Ryan. She was yelling over what sounded like a blender, or possibly just her own excitement. 15 million. 15 million views in 2 hours. Across all platforms. And it's not slowing down every time I refresh, it jumps. At this rate we could hit 100 million by tonight. Nice work. Nice. Are you okay? We're going to have a conversation later about your emotional range, but first, your subscriber count. You were at around 800,000 yesterday. You're at 3 million right now. 3 million, Ryan. And it's still going up. Ryan leaned back in his chair. 3 million. 800,000 to 3 million in a morning. Every one of those new subscribers had, at some point, said or heard his name. And a chunk of them would keep saying it to friends, to family, to strangers on the internet. This was the flywheel he'd been building for 2 years. And it was finally spinning. You earned those drumsticks, he said. Damn right I did. But listen, we've got a problem. The comments are split. A ton of people think it's CGI. Like, a lot of people. We need to figure out how to handle it. What do you think? Chloe went quiet for a second, and when she came back her voice had shifted from manic to calculating. This was the version of Chloe that Ryan actually relied on, not the screaming fangirl, but the girl who'd grown up managing her parents' small business social media and had a better instinct for audience behavior than most marketing professionals. 2 options, she said. Option 1, we respond now. Put out a statement, deny the CGI accusations, maybe post some behind-the-scenes footage. It'll settle things down fast, but the story dies in a few days. Option 2. We say nothing. Let the debate rage. Let the believers and the skeptics scream at each other for a couple days. That keeps us trending, keeps the views climbing, keeps your name in people's mouths. Then, once the hype is at maximum, we announce a live demonstration. Real time, no cuts, no edits, streamed to the world. Impossible to fake. The live demo, would it expose anything sensitive on Scrapper? I was about to ask you that. Everything that needs to stay hidden is already sealed and shielded. From the outside, the cockpit just looks like a standard control rig. Nobody's going to reverse engineer the neural link from a live stream. Then option 2. Option 2. They hung up. Ryan set the phone down and turned his attention to the thing he'd been waiting 14 years for. System. Show me Project 2. The data arrived like a dam breaking. Schematics, materials lists, structural specifications, performance parameters, engineering tolerances, a flood of technical information that poured into his mind and arranged itself into a coherent picture. Ryan stared at the ceiling for a long time. The project was, there was no other word for it, magnificent. The kind of thing that would stop the world in its tracks. The kind of thing people would talk about for a century. Visually stunning. Technologically unprecedented. A statement of ambition so massive it bordered on insanity. It was also completely, hopelessly impractical. The construction cost alone would run north of $4 billion. The materials required industrial infrastructure that didn't exist in the private sector. The scale demanded a workforce and a logistical chain that no startup, no corporation, no billionaire's vanity project could provide. And the commercial applications were limited. This wasn't a product. You couldn't sell it. You couldn't franchise it. It was a monument, breathtaking, world-shaking, and profoundly useless as a business proposition. Ryan let out a long, slow breath through his nose. Cool. Great. Glad I waited 14 years for a $4 billion art project. But even as the disappointment settled, the strategic part of his brain was already running calculations. The project didn't need to be commercial. It needed to be visible. If he could build it, if he could find someone with $4 billion and a reason to spend it, the fame alone would generate enough summon points to accelerate Project 3 into completion in months instead of decades. And there was only one entity on Earth that spent $4 billion on things that weren't commercially viable. Ryan filed that thought away for later. Lisa came home early that evening, grocery bag in hand, grinning in a way that made Ryan immediately suspicious. She'd seen the video. She followed his channel, never watched the welding content, but she'd seen the test video, and more importantly, she'd read the comments. Lisa Mercer had no interest in engineering, but she could read a room, and the room was losing its collective mind. "I'm proud of you," she said, setting the bag on the counter. "Also, I bought drumsticks. A lot of drumsticks." Chloe showed up at 6 with a bag of oranges and parked herself at the kitchen door, watching Lisa cook with the laser focus of a golden retriever tracking a tennis ball. Tom was last. He'd heard about the video from 3 different customers at the shop, each one more excited than the last, and he walked through the door wearing the dazed expression of a man whose reality had shifted between breakfast and dinner. The 4 of them sat down to eat, and for once, the table felt different. Lighter. Like the weight of 2 years and $200,000 had lifted by a few ounces. "Look at this," Chloe said, pulling up her phone with her free hand, drumstick in the other. 6 million on YouTube alone, and the meme accounts have already gotten hold of it. Someone cut together every single one of your welding videos into a 10-minute supercut called 2 Years of Pain. It's got 1 million views already." She turned the phone toward Ryan. He pushed it back without looking. "Not watching it. There's another one where somebody auto-tuned your servo actuator explanation into a lo-fi beat and it actually kind of slaps. Not watching it. You have zero appreciation for." Chloe's phone rang. She glanced at the screen unknown number and picked up. She listened for about 30 seconds. The drumstick stopped moving. Her eyes went wide and stayed that way. She lowered the phone, hit mute, and looked at Ryan. "There's a company called Marlin Technologies on the line. They want to buy Scrapper." She swallowed. "They're offering $500,000. The table went dead silent. Tom's hand was wrapped around a glass of sweet tea. It had developed a fine tremor. $500,000. He'd been a machinist for 23 years. He'd co-owned a shop, paid a mortgage, kept the lights on through 2 recessions. The most money he'd ever had in one place at one time was the day he'd closed on the house, and that had been the bank's money, not his. Everything he'd put into Scrapper, every dollar scraped and borrowed and pulled from the business added up to around $200,000. And now someone was offering to more than double it back in a single phone call. He almost said sell it. The word was right there, sitting on his tongue, ready to go. 23 years of blue-collar instinct screaming at him to take the money. But he didn't. He looked at Ryan. Lisa looked at Ryan. Chloe looked at Ryan. From the muted phone, the tinny voice of the Marlin Technologies representative was still talking something about the price being negotiable, about wanting to arrange an in-person evaluation, about being flexible. Ryan didn't hesitate. Not for 1 second. "Tell them no." Chloe relayed it. The voice on the other end started to push back. They were very interested, they could discuss terms, perhaps a meeting. Ryan gave a short nod. Chloe hung up. The silence after the click was very loud. Tom set down his tea. "Well," he said, with the careful tone of a man choosing his words. "That just happened." Lisa had already jumped ahead. "If that machine is worth $500,000, is it safe in a sheet metal building with a padlock on it?" "Anybody with a pair of bolt cutters." "The sensitive stuff is already secured," Ryan said. "And the rest of it weighs 20 tons. Nobody's walking off with it." Tom wasn't letting it go. "What's the play here, bud? Someone just offered you 500 grand and you didn't blink. That's more money than I've made in the last 10 years combined. I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm saying I'd like to understand. I've got a plan, Dad. Care to share?" "Not yet. But selling Scrapper would be the worst move I could make right now. Trust me." Tom studied his son across the dinner table. The kid was 14, and he'd just turned down $500,000 without a flicker of doubt. That was either genius or insanity, and Tom still couldn't tell which. He picked his tea back up. All right, he said. Your call. What Ryan couldn't explain, not without revealing the system, the points, the whole impossible truth, was that selling Scrapper was a dead end. The money was good, but money wasn't the bottleneck. Attention was the bottleneck. He needed his name on people's lips, not a check in his pocket. Selling the mech meant the story was over. Kid builds robot, kid sells robot, kid disappears. A footnote. Keeping it meant the story was just beginning. Live demonstrations. Media coverage. Scientific papers. Government interest. Each one a new wave of people saying his name, each wave pushing the next project closer to completion. And the next project, the magnificent, impractical, $4 billion behemoth sitting at 10% in his head, needed something no private buyer could offer. It needed the kind of backing that came with a flag on it. Ryan ate his drumstick and thought about who, exactly, had $4 billion and a reason to spend it on something that didn't turn a profit. It was a short list. Chapter 5, called out. The Mercers ate dinner. The internet did not rest. Somewhere between Ryan's second drumstick and Chloe's fourth, a blog post went live on the Marlin Technologies corporate website. Clean layout, professional tone, a header image of their logo against a slate gray background. The kind of page that looked like it had been written by a lawyer and approved by a PR team, because it had. The headline: Marlin Technologies offers $500,000 for viral mech creator refuses on-site verification. The article itself was short. Barely 500 words. It didn't need to be long, because the structure did all the work. Paragraph 1, Marlin Technologies, a leader in advanced robotics and defense applications, had identified the Scrapper test video as potentially significant. Paragraph 2, they had reached out through the creator's publicly listed contact information and made a generous, good faith offer of $500,000, contingent only on a standard in-person evaluation of the mech's capabilities. Paragraph 3, the creator's representative, described as a young woman, had declined the offer and refused the evaluation, then ended the call abruptly. That was it. No accusations. No editorializing. Not a single sentence that a lawyer could point to and say that's defamation. The word fake didn't appear anywhere in the text. It didn't need to. Because attached to the article, embedded in a neat little audio player at the bottom of the page, was a recording of the phone call. Their phone call recorded on Marlin's end, as corporate calls routinely are, and now released to the public with all the casual confidence of a company that had run the tape past legal before hitting publish. 38 seconds of audio. A man's voice, calm, measured, professional, explaining the offer. Mentioning the price. Proposing a simple in-person inspection, nothing invasive, just a chance to see the mech perform in the real world. Then a silence that stretched long enough to feel damning. And then Chloe's voice rushed, too loud, a teenager caught off guard, stammering out a refusal and hanging up before the man could finish his sentence. The man sounded like an adult doing business. Chloe sounded like a kid who'd been caught cheating on a test. Nobody at Marlin Technologies had to say the video was fake. The audio said it for them. Here was a serious company, putting real money on the table, asking for nothing more than a look, and the mech's people had panicked and run. Within an hour, the blog post had been shared 40,000 times. Within 2 hours, Marlin Technologies was trending on Twitter. Not as the company that made an offer. As the company that had caught a fraud. The narrative built itself. Marlin was the grown-up in the room, reasonable, transparent, willing to pay, and Ryan Mercer's team had slammed the door rather than let anyone verify the most extraordinary claim in modern engineering history. The framing was elegant, almost invisible. Marlin hadn't thrown a punch. They'd just opened a door and let the internet rush through it. And rush it did. The skeptics who'd been simmering since the video dropped, outnumbered by believers but never quiet, suddenly had a flag to rally around. The takes came fast and confident, each one building on the last. Let's use Occam's razor here. What's more likely, a 14-year-old in a backyard shed cracked neural mechanical interfaces that Lockheed and Boston Dynamics haven't figured out. Or his parents spent 10 grand on VFX for a viral stunt. I've been saying this from the start. The kid's family obviously has money. You don't build a 40-foot metal frame without serious cash. Rich parents, rich hobby, rich effects budget. It's not complicated. This is Balloon Boy 2.0. Parents bankrolling their kids' internet fame for clout. The VFX analysis crowd came next, armchair experts armed with screen grabs, slow-motion breakdowns, and the unshakable confidence of people who'd watched one too many Captain Disillusion videos. Quick VFX tip for the believers: dark environments are way cheaper to composite in. Low light, enclosed space, limited camera angles. It's basically a checklist for hiding CGI. And where did this test happen? A dimly lit tin shed. Coincidence? Pause at 28:39. Watch the concrete chunk that flies up when Scrapper's right foot comes down. The trajectory goes up and left, but the foot is moving right. Physics doesn't work that way unless somebody forgot to flip the particle sim. That timestamp 28:39 became its own meme. People were frame advancing through the video like it was the Zapruder film, circling pixels and drawing arrows and posting side-by-side comparisons that proved absolutely nothing but looked very convincing if you already wanted to believe. Then came the anonymous source. A post on a tech forum, no username anyone recognized, written with the casual authority of someone who'd been waiting for the right moment. I work at a VFX studio. Not going to name which one. A few months ago we got a rush job short-form video, teenage subject, mech suit, make it look real. Client paid well. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Make of that what you will. The post had no proof. No details. No verifiable information of any kind. It was a blank check that the skeptics cashed immediately. Within hours it had been screenshotted, reposted, embedded in Twitter threads and YouTube commentary videos. Someone turned it into an infographic. Someone else cited it in a Reddit megathread that had already passed 10,000 comments. A film school professor posted a 10-minute video essay about the telltale signs of CGI compositing in low-light environments. A TikToker with 2 million followers did a reaction video that consisted almost entirely of him pausing the footage and saying "see? See?" while pointing at nothing in particular. A Medium article titled "Why the Scrapper Video is Almost Certainly Fake" hit the front page of Hacker News and stayed there for 6 hours. The narrative was clean, logical, and satisfying. It made sense the way a good conspiracy theory always makes sense. Every piece of evidence fit, every objection had an answer, and the conclusion was far more comfortable than the alternative. A rich kid faking a viral video was a story people understood. A 14-year-old who had genuinely invented technology decades ahead of the entire defense industry was not. Marlin Technologies watched their website traffic spike by 800% and said nothing further. They didn't need to. The machine was running on its own now. And here was the part that nobody except Ryan knew. It didn't matter. The believers were saying his name. The skeptics were saying his name. The debunkers, the mimers, the frame analysts, the anonymous VFX insiders, the professors, the TikTokers, the Reddit mobs, every single one of them, on every side of the argument, in every thread and group chat and podcast and comment section and dining room conversation across the country, they were all saying Ryan Mercer. Over and over and over again. The system didn't care if people believed in him. It counted names, not opinions. And the counter was climbing faster than it ever had. Chapter 6, The Real First Productivity. Ryan woke up the next morning, scrolled through the overnight comment sections, and got angry. Not at Marlin Technologies. He'd deal with them later. And not at the skeptics. Skeptics were fine. Skeptics said his name when they argued about him, and that was the whole point. No, Ryan was angry at the lazy haters. The ones who trashed him in comments without ever using his actual name. This kid is so full of it. Imagine faking a mech video for clout. LMAO. Somebody lock this fraud up. Which kid? Which fraud? Say my name, you useless people. How is anyone reading your comment supposed to know who you're talking about? It was maddening. An entire army of people dedicated to tearing him apart, and they couldn't even be professional about it. If the system allowed it, Ryan would have created a dozen burner accounts and roasted himself, every post carefully structured to include his full legal name. Ryan Mercer is a fraud, and here's why. I can't believe Ryan Mercer thought he could fool us. Ryan Mercer should be ashamed of himself. Beautiful. Efficient. Each one worth a sum and point. But the system's rules were absolute, and so Ryan was stuck relying on the general public to be competent haters. They were not. As for Marlin Technologies, Ryan wished them well. Sincerely. The harder they swung now, the worse the whiplash when the truth came out. Every article, every PR stunt, every smug blog post was a receipt they'd eventually have to eat in public. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Breakfast wasn't even finished when Ryan's phone started buzzing. Text after text. Some from classmates. Some from teachers. A few from people he hadn't spoken to in years. All of them reporting the same thing, someone had contacted them for interviews. The media had found his school. It made sense the video had blown up too fast for journalists to pin him down personally. But reporters were resourceful, and a 14-year-old prodigy who'd finished high school early wasn't exactly invisible. His school records, his teachers, his classmates, they were all public adjacent, and they were all talking. Ryan sent the same reply to everyone: go ahead and talk to them. Answer honestly. Just don't give out my home address or phone number. And take the interview money they're offering, you might as well. Then he called Chloe. She picked up sounding like she'd been asleep for approximately 45 seconds. Which she had. Wah. The media's been calling you, right? A long pause. The sound of blankets shifting. Oh. Yeah. My phone was going nuts at like 2 in the morning. People wanting interviews, access, all that. I figured we were still doing the cold treatment thing, so I put it on airplane mode and went back to sleep. Perfect. Keep ignoring them for now. Cool. Can I go back to sleep? Drumsticks tonight. I'm listening. That's the whole sentence. Drumsticks tonight. Go back to sleep. She hung up without saying goodbye, which Ryan took as a positive sign. By noon, the story had shifted. Ryan pulled up the trending topics and watched the battlefield rearrange itself in real time. Yesterday's narrative kid fakes a mech video, gets exposed by Marlin Technologies was cracking at the seams. The interviews had done it. Dozens of articles, blog posts, and news segments had dropped throughout the morning, all built on the same raw material, first-hand accounts from Ryan's teachers and classmates. And the picture they painted didn't match the rich kid with a VFX budget story at all. Ryan Mercer completed his high school curriculum at age 14. He has been the top-ranked student at his school every year since enrollment. According to his physics teacher, Mercer routinely scored near-perfect marks on exams that most seniors struggled with. Former classmates describe him as scary smart and not normal in a good way. The framing was devastating not because it proved Scrapper was real, but because it destroyed the comfortable assumption that Ryan was ordinary. Ordinary kids didn't skip 4 grades. Ordinary kids didn't ace high school at 14. The skeptic's entire argument rested on the premise that a teenager couldn't build a working mech, and that premise looked a lot weaker when the teenager in question turned out to be a genuine, documented prodigy. The comment sections had turned into war zones. Believers armed with the new interviews clashing with skeptics who dug in too deep to retreat. Everyone saying it's fake. Go look at this kid's actual academic record. He finished high school at 14. Valedictorian. This isn't some random rich kid, this is an actual genius. Oh please, being smart in school doesn't mean you can build a 40-foot robot in your garage. Einstein couldn't have built a mech either. Einstein also wasn't building one, so that's not really the flex you think it is. For everyone calling it fake, ask yourself what you were doing at 14. Were you top of your school? Were you designing anything more complex than a paper airplane? Ryan scrolled through the carnage with a warm feeling in his chest. Both sides were furious. Both sides were engaged. And both sides were saying his name, linking articles, tagging posts, shouting into the void with Ryan Mercer on their lips. This was what he'd been building toward. Not the video itself, the argument. The controversy. The kind of story that people couldn't stop talking about, couldn't stop debating, couldn't stop bringing up at lunch and in group chats and on podcasts. Haters, Ryan decided, were the true engine of productivity. Forget innovation. Forget hard work. Give him 1,000 people who despised him and couldn't shut up about it, and he'd have enough summon points to fast-track a project in weeks. The second project's progress bar was climbing visibly now. Every hour brought a new tick upward. I love haters, Ryan thought, with the sincerity of a man who had found religion. Haters are the real first productivity. Across town, at Marlin Technologies, the mood was less festive. The PR manager, the same man who'd made the original phone call, written the blog post, and orchestrated the previous night's media blitz, was staring at his screen with the expression of someone watching a building he'd just ensured catch fire. He's actually a genius. The manager scrolled through the morning's coverage. 14 years old. Finished high school. Top of his class. How did we not know this? He'd been so sure. The whole play was built on the assumption that Ryan Mercer was a rich kid with a camera and a dream easy to discredit, easy to bury. The blog post, the audio recording, the carefully implied accusation of fraud. It was all predicated on the target being ordinary. The target was not ordinary. The manager went to his boss's office, explained the situation, requested an increase in the PR budget to counter the new narrative. The boss listened, nodded, and doubled the budget without argument. "Handle it," he said. Then, after the manager left, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. 2 investor calls this morning. 2. Before the scrapper stunt, Marlin Technologies had been a mid-tier robotics firm that nobody outside the industry had heard of. Now their name was trending alongside the biggest viral story of the year. Controversy is currency, the boss thought. And business was booming. As for whether the mech was real, he wasn't worried. He considered himself a man of science, and science was clear: a 14-year-old could not build a functioning mech. Period. The laws of physics didn't make exceptions for prodigies. This was a fight he was going to win. Chapter 7, Room for Improvement. The internet could fight all it wanted. Ryan had work to do. He sat in Scrapper's cockpit with a bubble tea Chloe had brought over, staring at a screen full of numbers that were making his day progressively worse. The cockpit's touchscreen doubled as a programming terminal popped open a panel beneath the display, and there was a secondary interface for running diagnostics and tweaking Scrapper's control software. Ryan had pulled the full data log from the test 2 days ago and was running it against the self-diagnostic suite, line by line, while Chloe lounged in a camp chair 30 feet below, scrolling her phone. The good news came first. Performance data from the test was solid. Movement responsiveness, load-bearing capacity, joint articulation, all within expected parameters. Scrapper hadn't come close to its structural limits during the walk. The 4 steps, the roll, the stand-up, all of it had been well inside the safe operating envelope. The frame could handle significantly more stress before anything critical gave out. That was the good news. The diagnostic report was the bad news. Ryan scrolled through it with the slow, methodical calm of a doctor reading a scan that was about to ruin someone's afternoon. Multiple component flags. Degradation warnings across a dozen subsystems. Stress fractures forming in joint housings. Microfailures in cable insulation. Thermal damage in 3 separate actuator mounts. The root cause was the same in every case: materials. Scrapper was built from ordinary structural steel. Good steel, the best Tom's machining shop could source, but still just steel. In the original Pacific Rim universe, even the first-generation Jaegers used titanium core frames with titanium alloy armor plating. Crimson Typhoon was 1,700 tons of exotic metallurgy. Stryker Eureka's chassis alone cost more than most countries' annual defense budgets. Ryan's version was built from the same stuff they made highway guardrails out of. And the movie version of Scrapper Amara's junkyard mech was actually better than his, materials-wise. She'd scavenged parts from decommissioned Jaegers. Her actuators were pulled from a Mark III. Her neural relay housing came from a Mark II. Salvaged military hardware, all of it. Ryan didn't have a Jaeger graveyard to pick through. He had a machining shop and a depleted savings account. The worst flag in the report made his stomach drop. The neural link circuitry, the one genuinely advanced system on the entire mech, the component that represented 3 years of painstaking fabrication, was degrading fast. The conductive pathways were rated for maybe 10 more activations before the signal quality dropped below usable thresholds. After that, the whole system would need to be rebuilt from scratch. 10 uses. That was it. The neural link was also the most expensive component on Scrapper by a factor of 20. Rebuilding it would cost more than everything else on the mech combined, and Ryan didn't have the money. He sat in the cockpit for a long moment, 30 feet up, bubble tea going warm in his hand. 10 uses. Mecha is a rich man's hobby, he thought bitterly. And I am not a rich man. His phone rang. Tom. Hey, bud, I've got reporters showing up at the shop now. Somebody figured out where I work. They want interviews, they want to see Scrapper. One of them asked if I'd do a ride-along in the mech. What do I tell these people? Talk to them if you want, Ryan said. Just don't mention the live stream yet. I'm planning to go live on Saturday noon and I want the announcement to drop on our terms, not theirs. Saturday. Got it. Anything else? Yeah, if any of them offer you money for an interview, take it. Tom laughed. It was the laugh of a man who'd spent 23 years turning down overtime pay and was now being told to accept cash for talking. Will do. Ryan hung up and climbed down from the cockpit. Chloe was still in the camp chair, phone propped on her knee, wearing the particular expression she got when the internet was being stupid in an entertaining way. New development, she said without looking up. Marlon put out another article. What's the angle this time? You're not going to believe this. She turned the phone around so he could read the headline. The article, another polished, lawyer-approved piece from Marlon's PR department, laid out a theory so elaborate it bordered on fan fiction. According to Marlon Technologies, Ryan Mercer's entire life had been a long-term scheme to secure a special admissions slot at a top university. The timeline, as they presented it, skipped several grades to establish prodigy credentials. Start a YouTube channel documenting a fake mech build. Cultivate a genius teenager persona over several years. Then, when no university came calling on its own, manufacture a viral moment with a CGI test video to force their hand. The article concluded that Ryan's stunt had simply gotten out of control. The public attention had exceeded what he'd planned for, and now his carefully constructed persona was on the verge of collapse. Ryan read it twice. These people, he said slowly, have incredible imaginations. Truly. It's almost a shame they're wasting it on PR instead of writing novels. Right? Like, why couldn't they just imagine the mech being real? Because that would require them to be smart. Chloe cackled and went back to scrolling. The article had already hit trending, which meant more people reading it, more people arguing about it, more people saying his name. Ryan almost wanted to send Marlon's PR manager a thank you card. He glanced at the article's comment section. It was a bloodbath, as expected. But mixed in with the usual noise was a thread that caught his eye. Someone had done a deep dive into Marlon Technologies' actual product line and discovered that their flagship advanced robotics platform was a glorified warehouse drone that had been in beta for 3 years. The replies were merciless. Ryan bookmarked it. Might come in handy later. All right, he said, turning to Chloe. Here's the plan. Tomorrow morning, post the announcement, live stream test, Saturday at noon, right here. Open invitation to media. Anyone who shows up can stream simultaneously from their own cameras. And we want them using your name in their stream titles. Obviously. Chloe grinned. She understood the game even if she didn't know the mechanics behind it. More streams with his name attached meant more visibility, more shares, more people talking. One more thing, she said. Saturday, can I try piloting Scrapper? Ryan looked at her. What? I've been filming this thing for 2 years. I think I've earned a turn. No. Come on. Chloe. Piloting a mech isn't like driving a car. Even with the neural link handling the signal translation, you still need balance, coordination, spatial awareness. Your brain has to manage a body that's 60 times your size. An untrained pilot would lose their balance in the first 3 seconds and face-plant a 40-foot robot into the ground. I have great balance. You tripped over your own tripod 2 days ago. That was a tactical stumble. The answer is no. When Scrapper's more stable and I've built some safety protocols, maybe. Not now. Chloe huffed. Then brightened. When you say maybe. I said maybe. I'm hearing yes eventually. You're hearing what you want to hear. Go home, write the announcement, and get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be loud. She grabbed her bag and headed for the door, already typing on her phone. At the threshold she turned back with a look Ryan recognized, the one that meant she was about to say something she'd been thinking about for a while. You know, she said, once the live stream proves Scrapper is real, the universities are going to come knocking. Like, MIT, Caltech, all of them. Probably. And you'll end up at one of them. Doing your genius thing. Probably. She shrugged, going for casual and not quite making it. I'm applying to USC. The directing program. So, you know. Different worlds. Ryan looked at her. Chloe Parker, the girl who'd been filming his welding videos since before anyone cared, who ate drumsticks like they were going extinct, whose brain ran on Dr. Pepper and an unshakable belief that everything would work out. She wasn't a genius. She wasn't even a particularly good student. Her parents had steered her toward the arts early because academics weren't going to be her path, and she'd landed on filmmaking because it was the one thing she did that felt like more than a hobby. She was also the only person who'd stuck with him through 2 years of day 47 of welding Scrapper, content without once asking for anything more than drumsticks and soda. Different worlds, Ryan agreed. But I'm still going to need a camera crew. Chloe's face split into a grin. Damn right you are. She left. Ryan stood in the workshop, alone with Scrapper and the diagnostic report and the knowledge that his most critical component had 10 uses left before it turned into expensive scrap. 10 chances to change everything. Better make them count. Chapter 8, Uninvited Guests. Ryan and Chloe stepped out of the workshop and walked straight into a wall of cameras. There were at least a dozen of them, reporters, photographers, a couple of two-person crews with shoulder-mounted video rigs scattered across the yard and the street beyond it like an occupying force. Some had lawn chairs. One had a cooler. They'd clearly been there for a while. The second Ryan's face cleared the workshop door, the whole group surged forward. Mr. Mercer. Can you confirm? Ryan, just a few questions. Is it true that Marlin Technologies? Ryan retreated so fast he nearly knocked Chloe back through the doorway. They scrambled inside the house and locked the front door, breathing hard, listening to the muffled sound of reporters regrouping on the lawn. Chloe peered through the blinds. There's a guy out there eating a sandwich and staring at our front door. Like, directly at it. With eye contact. Entertainment press, Ryan said. Has to be. How can you tell? The stakeout commitment. News reporters go home after an hour. Entertainment people will camp outside your house until you die or become boring. They were stuck. Ryan could handle it was his house, but Chloe couldn't exactly push through a crowd of cameras without becoming the story herself. She parked on the couch and resigned herself to an afternoon of captivity, scrolling her phone and providing running commentary on the internet's ongoing meltdown. By evening, the press contingent had thinned but not disappeared. A few diehards lingered under the streetlight, eating takeout and watching the house with the patient intensity of birdwatchers. Chloe's parents picked her up at 7. Her mom's minivan pulled into the driveway, and Chloe made a break for it head down, bag clutched to her chest, moving with the speed and determination of someone who'd watched too many paparazzi chase scenes. 2 reporters tried to intercept her. She didn't slow down. The minivan door slid shut and they were gone. Tom and Lisa got home 20 minutes later and had to park on the street because a news van was blocking the driveway. Interesting day. Lisa said, stepping over a discarded coffee cup on the front walk. They've been here since noon. Wonderful. I hope they enjoyed the view of our dead lawn. Dinner. The 4 o'clock news was on, and none of them could resist. The anchor led with a package that had clearly been assembled in a hurry, stock footage of robots, a few seconds of Ryan's test video, watermarked, pulled from YouTube, and a graphic that read Teen Mech Builder, real or fake. A video posted online earlier this week by 14-year-old Ryan Mercer of Crestfield, Texas, has sparked a national debate. Mercer claims to have built a functioning mech, a large, piloted robot in his family's workshop. The segment cut to Scrapper's concept art, then to a still from the test video. The mech, which Mercer calls Scrapper, stands approximately 40 feet tall. In the video, Mercer appears to control the machine using some kind of manual interface, directing it to stand and walk. The video has been viewed over 50 million times across multiple platforms. Cut to the studio. A man in a sport coat introduced by the Chiron as a robotics consultant sat across from the anchor with the easy confidence of someone about to explain why everything you just saw was impossible. Look, the physics here just don't work. That much mass, that kind of articulation, powered by what appears to be a single diesel generator. The power density alone would need to be orders of magnitude beyond anything in the current literature. And the control system, this kid claims he's operating a 40-foot machine with hand gestures. Without visible actuator arrays, without hydraulic lines, without any of the infrastructure you'd need for a system this size? I'm sorry, but no. The anchor nodded in the way anchors do when they've already decided the narrative. So in your assessment, the video is most likely fabricated. I'd say the probability of this being genuine is extremely low. Tom muted the TV. Well, he said. That was fun. Saturday, Ryan said. Noon. That'll settle it. Lisa was already somewhere else mentally. If this thing is real and I know it's real, Ryan, I saw it move, then we need to talk about security. That workshop has a padlock and sheet metal walls. If Scrapper is worth what Marlin offered. The only thing on Scrapper worth stealing is the neural link, and that's sealed inside the chest housing. Nobody's cracking it open without power tools in about 6 hours. And the rest of the mech weighs 20 tons. It's not going anywhere. Lisa didn't look entirely satisfied, but she let it go. For now. The next morning, Chloe posted the announcement. She'd drafted it overnight, clean, punchy, no unnecessary words. Ryan had approved it over text at 6 a.m. Live demonstration Saturday, 12 p.m. CT. Scrapper will undergo a full operational test, streamed live with no cuts and no edits. All credentialed media are invited to attend in person and operate their own cameras. Details below. The internet, which had spent the last 3 days screaming into the void waiting for Ryan to say something, received this like a match hitting gasoline. Within minutes, comments were pouring in. Holy shit, he's actually doing a live test? How confident is this kid? Calling it now, something will go wrong right before the test. A fire, a power failure, some convenient excuse. The TV expert literally said it's fake last night and this dude just announces a live stream? LMAO, the balls on this kid. Still chasing that special admissions spot, hey? Chloe read through the first wave, shrugged, tossed her phone onto her pillow, and went back to sleep. They were insulting Ryan, not her. His problem. 400 miles away, in a borrowed office at UT Austin, Professor Douglas Ward was watching the same video for the 11th time. Ward was a materials scientist from MIT, one of the department's senior researchers, with 2 decades of work in advanced alloys and composite structures. He was in Austin for a week-long academic exchange, sharing a temporary office with his colleague James Hartley, who specialized in aerospace propulsion systems. Ward wasn't watching the video because he thought it was fake. He also wasn't watching it because he thought it was real. He was watching it because the math didn't add up, and that bothered him. The mech scrapper, the kid called it, was clearly built from ordinary steel. Ward could tell from the color, the surface texture, the way it caught light. Plain carbon steel, maybe some low alloy structural grade. Heavy stuff. At that scale, the frame alone would mass somewhere north of 20 tons, probably closer to 30 with the actuators and internal systems included. And it was moving on a single power cable connected to a diesel generator. That was the part Ward kept rewinding. One cable. One generator. Moving 30+ tons of steel through complex articulated motions, standing, walking, maintaining balance. The energy requirements for that were enormous. The power density implied by a single cable feed was not consistent with any existing technology he was aware of. If the video was CGI, it was the best he'd ever seen. If it wasn't CGI, then the power and drive systems inside that mech were something genuinely new. Either way, it was worth a closer look. He pulled up the live stream announcement. Saturday. Noon. Crestfield, Texas. He was already in Texas. Crestfield was, he checked, about 3 hours by car. Jim. He turned to Hartley, who was eating a sandwich at the adjacent desk. You see this mech kid? Hartley glanced over. The 14-year-old? Please. It's obviously. Look at the power feed. Hartley looked. Chewed. Looked again. Hey. One cable. Diesel guinea. Moving 30 tons. Could be hidden cables. Off-screen power source. Watch the wide shot. Camera woman backs all the way outside. You can see the full footprint. One cable. Hartley set down his sandwich. Watched the wide shot. Rewound it. Watched it again. That's not nothing, he admitted. I want to go see it in person. Before the live stream. The kid's address shouldn't be hard to find. Half the media in Texas is camped outside his house. Doug, it's a 14-year-old in a garage. A 14-year-old who finished high school at 14 and is somehow pushing 30 tons on a single power feed. I've sat through worse faculty presentations. Hartley considered this. It was, unfortunately, true. Fine. But if this turns out to be a science fair project with a good camera angle, you're buying dinner. Ward made some calls. A contact at UT Austin's engineering department had already been fielding media requests about the scrapper story and had a home address on file. Ward called Tom Mercer directly, introduced himself, explained his credentials, and asked if he and his colleague could visit the following day. Tom called Ryan. Ryan said yes immediately. 2 MIT professors with defense-adjacent research portfolios wanted to inspect Scrapper in person. That was exactly the kind of attention the second project needed. The pieces were starting to move. Chapter 9, a sophisticated fake, at least. The workshop door opened just wide enough for people to slip through single file. Ryan went first, then the 2 professors, then Tom and Lisa bringing up the rear. Ward stepped inside and stopped. He'd seen the video. He'd watched it 11 times. He knew the dimensions, had estimated the mass, had run napkin calculations on the power requirements. None of that prepared him for the physical reality of standing at the feet of a 40-foot steel skeleton. Scrapper filled the workshop the way a cathedral fills its nave, not just occupying the space but defining it. Everything else in the building existed in relation to the mech. The tools, the workbenches, the generator, the cracked concrete, all of it was context. Scrapper was the sentence. "Well," Hartley said quietly. "That's bigger than I expected." Ward was already moving. He crossed to Scrapper's nearest foot and placed his palm flat against the ankle joint. "Cool steel." He rapped it with his knuckles. Tapped the weld seam where the ankle housing met the lower leg strut. Ran his fingers along the grain of the metal. Plain carbon steel. Maybe A36, maybe something slightly better. Nothing exotic. Nothing that would raise an eyebrow at any fabrication shop in the country. Which made the video even more confusing. "Can we see it operate?" Ward asked, turning to Ryan. Ryan shook his head. "Not today." The diagnostic report flagged material degradation across several subsystems. Most of the components are running on borrowed time. "I'm saving the remaining operational cycles for tomorrow's live stream. But I can show you the diagnostics, walk you through the engineering, answer any questions." Ward nodded. "Fair enough. If the kid was telling the truth about component degradation, wasting a cycle on a private demo would be stupid. If he was lying, the live stream tomorrow would expose him anyway." "Then let's start with the obvious question," Ward said. "How do you control it?" In the video, there's no visible control interface beyond what looks like a pair of gloves and some foot pedals. No joystick arrays, no hydraulic feedback rigs, nothing consistent with operating a system this size. "What am I missing?" Ryan hesitated. Ward caught it a pause just long enough to mean the kid was deciding how much to say, not stalling for time. "I built a system I call a neural link," Ryan said. "It connects the pilot's nervous system directly to Scrapper's control architecture. Motor signals from the brain get translated into machine commands in real-time: hand movements, weight shifts, balance corrections, all of it. The pilot thinks, the mech moves." Silence. Ward glanced at Hartley. Hartley's expression hadn't changed, but Ward had known the man for 15 years and could read the micro-shift: a slight tightening around the eyes, the jaw setting half a degree. Translation: "This kid just lost me." Neural mechanical interfaces were a real field. DARPA had programs. Universities had programs. The best of them could manage a cursor on a screen or a robotic arm performing gross motor tasks with a 2-second delay. What Ryan was describing, real-time full-body motor translation with the fidelity to balance a 30-ton bipedal system, wasn't just beyond current capability. It was beyond current theory. It was like a street vendor hanging a sign that read, "Professional aircraft carrier repair, also nuclear warhead maintenance, $5." Ward kept his face neutral. "That's an extraordinary claim. I know how it sounds. You're describing a technology that would represent, conservatively, a 30-year leap over the current state of the art in brain-machine interfaces." "Yes. Built by a 14-year-old. Also yes." Ward let it sit. There was no productive way to challenge the claim without seeing it operate, and the kid had already explained why he wasn't demonstrating today. So Ward did what any good scientist would do when presented with an extraordinary claim and insufficient data: he set it aside and looked at what he could evaluate. "Walk me through the rest of it," he said. Ryan did. They spent the next hour circling Scrapper at ground level while Ryan pointed out design details that weren't visible in the video. Joint articulation geometry. Load distribution pathways. The cable routing that ran through Scrapper's torso like a nervous system of its own. The way the hip joints used a compound pivot that allowed rotational movement in 3 axes simultaneously. Ward listened with increasing discomfort. Not because the explanations were bad. Because they were good. Too good. The compound hip pivot alone was an elegant solution to a problem that most robotics engineers solved with bulky multi-joint assemblies. The cable routing minimized signal loss while maintaining flexibility across the full range of motion. The load distribution wasn't textbook, it was better than textbook, accounting for dynamic stress patterns that only mattered in bipedal systems, which almost nobody built at this scale. These weren't the answers of a kid reciting a script. These were the answers of someone who understood the engineering at a level that Ward found frankly unsettling. Hartley, who'd been quiet for most of the tour, finally spoke up at the base of Scrapper's spine. "This torso junction," he said, pointing to a cluster of structural members where the upper and lower body met. The load path splits into 4 channels here and reconverges at the hip mounts. That's not a standard truss pattern. Where did you get this design? I came up with it, Ryan said. Standard truss patterns don't account for the lateral forces generated during bipedal locomotion. If you use a conventional X-brace here, the torso twists under asymmetric leg loading. The 4-channel split distributes the torsional stress evenly across both hip mounts. Hartley stared at the junction for a long time. Then he looked at Ward. Ward looked back. Neither of them said anything. Ryan led them up the ladder next all the way to the cockpit, 30 feet above the cracked concrete. The 2 professors climbed without complaint, though Hartley's grip on the rungs was noticeably tighter than Ward's. The cockpit was as bare as the video suggested. Seat, vest, pedals, straps, touch screen, gloves. No armor. No canopy. Open to the air on 3 sides. The wind at this height was noticeable. Ryan powered up the touchscreen battery backup, independent of the main generator, and ran the self-diagnostic suite. Lines of data cascaded across the display. System statuses. Component health ratings. Thermal histories. Stress accumulation logs. Ward leaned in. The diagnostic interface was clean, well-organized, and responsive. The data looked real, not the kind of thing you'd mock up for a demonstration, because nobody would bother faking thermal gradient logs for individual actuator mounts. This diagnostic suite, Ward said. You wrote this? From scratch. What language? Custom. Based on C++, but I needed real-time interrupt handling that the standard libraries couldn't give me, so I wrote my own kernel-level interface. Hartley made a sound in the back of his throat that might have been a cough and might have been his worldview cracking. They climbed down. Said their goodbyes. Shook hands with Tom and Lisa. Walked out through the gap in the workshop door and back into the Texas afternoon. They didn't speak until they were in the rental car with the doors closed and the AC running. So, Ward said. So, Hartley agreed. A long pause. Is it real? Ward asked. Hartley rubbed his face with both hands. The neural link claim is insane. Absolutely insane. If anyone else on Earth told me they'd built a real-time full-body neural mechanical interface in a backyard workshop, I'd walk out of the room. But that torso junction is one of the most elegant structural solutions I've seen in 20 years. And he didn't hesitate when I asked about it. He didn't recite an answer, he reasoned through it, in real time, like he'd thought about the problem from 6 different angles before I even opened my mouth. Ward nodded slowly. The diagnostic suite bothered me. The thermal logs are granular down to individual actuator mounts. Nobody fakes that level of detail for a hoax. There's no audience for actuator thermal data. You'd only generate it if you actually needed it. So what are we looking at? Ward stared out the windshield at the flat Texas horizon. Even if this is a fake, he said carefully, it's the most sophisticated fake I've ever encountered. The physical engineering alone, the frame, the joints, the load paths, represents years of serious work by someone who understands structural dynamics at a graduate level. At minimum. He's 14, Doug. I know. He wrote his own kernel-level interface. I know. Hartley shook his head. What do you want to do? Come back tomorrow. Watch the live stream in person. If that mech moves the way it did in the video with that control fidelity, on one power feed, then we're not looking at a hoax. We're looking at something that needs to go up the chain immediately. Up the chain meaning? Meaning I make a phone call to Lincoln Lab and tell them to turn on their television. Hartley sat with that for a moment. Then he started the car. You're buying dinner, he said. I thought that was only if it turned out to be a science fair project. It's turning out to be a headache, which is worse. You're buying dinner. Ward didn't argue. He was already composing the email in his head. Chapter 10, Live, Part 1. Saturday. 6 a.m. Ryan was already in the workshop, running his hands along Scrapper's ankle joint in the grey pre-dawn light, checking cable tension by feel. He'd been up since 4:30, unable to sleep, running through the sequence in his head: power up, climb, link, move, like a musician rehearsing a set list before the biggest show of his life. Chloe arrived at 7 with 2 bags of equipment and a gas station coffee that she clutched like a weapon. You look terrible, she said. Thanks. I mean it. There are bags under your eyes that have bags. Did you sleep at all? Enough. She didn't push it. She unpacked her gear and started setting up main camera on the tripod at a 45-degree upward angle facing Scrapper's front, giving the widest possible frame. A backup camera on a smaller rig near the workshop door for the wide shot. Wireless lavalier mic for Ryan. Audio check, she said. Say something. Something. Hilarious. You're wasted in engineering. Ward and Hartley showed up at 8, earlier than Ryan expected. They'd traded yesterday's casual clothes for something closer to business casual. Ward in a button-down with the sleeves rolled, Hartley in a polo as if they'd independently decided that today might turn out to be important and dressed accordingly. Tom shook their hands at the door. Lisa offered coffee. They accepted. The four adults positioned themselves along the back wall, out of the way but with a clear sight line to Scrapper. Ward had a small notebook. Hartley had nothing except the expression of a man who hadn't entirely decided whether he was here as a scientist or a spectator. At 11, the media arrived. Chloe met them at the workshop door, clipboard in hand, checking names against a list she'd spent 2 days assembling. 23 people in total: freelance journalists, bloggers with six-figure followings, camera crews from 2 local TV stations, a reporter from a tech outlet Ryan actually read, and one guy who claimed to represent a podcast with a very engaged niche audience and turned out to have 400 subscribers. Chloe let them all in. She'd negotiated the same deal with every single one of them: you can film, you can stream, you can set up wherever you find space. One condition: your stream title includes the words Ryan Mercer and Scrapper. No exceptions. Some of them had grumbled about editorial independence. Chloe had smiled and reminded them that editorial independence was something they could exercise from the comfort of their own homes, without access to the only functioning mech on Earth. They agreed. The workshop filled up fast. Camera crews jockeyed for position, staking out angles around Scrapper's perimeter like surveyors mapping a monument. Within minutes there were over a dozen camera setups ringing the mech front, sides, rear, low angles, high angles. One crew had brought a stepladder. Another had a drone, which Ryan immediately vetoed. No drones inside. The ceiling's 50 feet and Scrapper's head is at 40. You'll crash it into the mech or the rafters, and either way I'm not paying for it. The drone went back in its case. Through the various live stream feeds, Scrapper was now visible from nearly every angle simultaneously. Chloe had her main camera on the money shot Scrapper's full front, tilted up, the kind of angle that made you feel like you were standing at the base of a skyscraper and looking up. The reporters began their intros. Each one stood in front of their camera with Scrapper looming behind them, framed to maximize the visual impact, and delivered some version of the same opening. Good morning, everyone. We're live from Crestfield, Texas, where 14-year-old Ryan Mercer is about to attempt a live demonstration of his homemade mech, Scrapper. Behind me is the machine that's been at the center of one of the biggest viral debates of the year. In just a few minutes, we'll find out once and for all whether Ryan Mercer's Scrapper is the real deal or the most elaborate hoax in internet history. Ryan tuned them out. He was running through the checklist one more time. Generator fuel full. Cable connections seated. Cockpit system standby. Diagnostic: he'd run it at 5 a.m., all green, no new flags since yesterday's report. The neural link had 10 uses left. After today, 9. One of the sharper reporters spotted Ward and Hartley standing against the back wall and made a beeline for them, camera crew in tow. Ryan intercepted her 3 steps short. They're not part of the show. Professor Ward is from MIT's Materials Science Department. That's a story. It's a story you can chase after the demonstration. Right now, they're here as private observers. The reporter weighed her options, decided Ryan wasn't bluffing, and retreated. Ward caught Ryan's eye from across the workshop and gave a small nod. Thanks. Ryan nodded back. Then he turned to Chloe. We're good. She looked up from her camera's viewfinder. Her face had changed. The joking, drumstick-obsessed teenager was gone, replaced by something focused and steady. This was the version of Chloe who'd been shooting and editing video content for 2 years and knew exactly how a moment like this was supposed to be captured. We're good. Chat's going crazy already. You've got, she checked her phone, about 2 million concurrent viewers across all platforms. And that's just on our stream. The media feeds are pulling their own numbers. 2 million people watching. All of them about to see him either prove the skeptics wrong or humiliate himself on a global stage. Ryan rolled his shoulders. Cracked his knuckles. Let's go. 400 miles away, in a cramped dorm room at Texas A&M, Danny Price was sitting on the edge of his bed with his laptop balanced on a stack of textbooks, 3 browser tabs open to 3 different livestream feeds. He'd been ready since 11. Alarm set, snacks staged, roommate warned not to interrupt. Marcus had taken one look at Danny's setup and decided to spend the afternoon at the library, which was the most considerate thing Marcus had done all semester. Danny had Chloe's main feed in the primary tab, the front-facing angle, Scrapper's full frame filling the screen, indicator lights dark, the mech standing silent and waiting. The second tab showed a side-angle feed from one of the TV crews, good for catching details the main camera might miss. The third was a tech blogger stream with running commentary that Danny mostly ignored but occasionally found useful. The chat on Chloe's feed was moving so fast it was unreadable. Danny turned it off. He didn't need other people's opinions right now. He needed to see. He'd believed from the start. Not because he had evidence, because the video felt real in a way he couldn't articulate and didn't try to. The weight. The dust. The way the concrete cracked. You could fake visuals, but you couldn't fake physics. Today would prove him right or make him an idiot. Either way, he was watching. Back in the workshop, the reporters had gone quiet. 23 cameras tracked Ryan as he walked to the generator, lifted the power cable onto his shoulder, and carried it to Scrapper's ankle coupling. The cable connected with a heavy, satisfying chunk that the lavalier mic picked up clean. Ryan hit the generator. The diesel engine roared to life, filling the workshop with its deep, mechanical pulse. The sound bounced off the sheet metal walls and came back doubled, tripled, until the air itself seemed to vibrate. Indicator lights began cascading up Scrapper's frame. Green, amber, red, hundreds of them, tracing the major systems as they came online. The lights climbed from the ankles to the knees to the hips to the torso, each new row illuminating with a faint electronic tick that was barely audible under the generator's rumble. By the time the lights reached Scrapper's head, the entire mech was glowing. A vertical constellation in the dim workshop. Alive. Oh man, one of the reporters breathed, off mic but not off camera. Ryan looked up at the cockpit. 30 feet of ladder. The crowd behind him, the cameras, the millions of screens, all of it compressed into this single moment. He grabbed the first rung and started climbing. Chapter 11, Live, Part 2. From below, the cockpit looked like a cage bolted to the chest of a giant. Ryan settled into the seat and started strapping in. Sensor vest first buckled across the chest, pulled tight. Foot pedals locked. Shoulder harness clipped. Then the gloves, one at a time, flexing his fingers to check the fit. 23 cameras watched him do it. The reporters had expected something impressive. A holographic interface, maybe. A helmet with a heads-up display. Mechanical arms that mirrored his movements. Something that looked like the future. What they got was a vest, a pair of gloves, and a headband. That's it. One of the TV reporters muttered to her cameraman, just barely off mic. That's the control system. I don't even see buttons. This is the part where it falls apart. The frame is impressive, sure. But that setup is controlling a 40-foot robot? No way. In the livestream chats, the reaction was the same. What is he putting on LMAO? Bro, that's a Halloween costume. Okay, I was a believer, but that control system looks like something from a high school play. The whole mech is incredible, and then the cockpit looks like he bought it at Goodwill. Ward and Hartley, standing against the back wall, exchanged a look. They knew what the gear was. Ryan had explained it yesterday. The neural link. The technology that sounded like science fiction and looked like a garage sale. If anything, the cheapness of the equipment made Ward more curious, not less. A real neural interface wouldn't need to look impressive. It would need to work. And the gap between Scrapper's engineering sophistication and the cockpit's apparent simplicity was exactly the kind of contradiction that meant something interesting was happening underneath. At Marlin Technologies headquarters, the boss and the PR manager were watching the livestream on a wall-mounted projector. The boss swirled a glass of red wine. The PR manager had one too, though he hadn't drunk from it. His hand was steady but his eyes were doing too much work, scanning the feed, reading the chat, tracking viewer counts. He's really going through with it, the boss said, amused. Got to admire the commitment. It doesn't matter. The second he tries to move that thing live, with 20 cameras on him, the illusion breaks. CGI doesn't work in real time. The PR manager took a sip. Unless he's got some kind of mechanical rig hidden inside that we're not seeing. And if he does, then it's an impressive puppet show, not a mech. Either way, he loses. The boss raised his glass to the end of the welding kit. They clinked. The boss had every reason to celebrate. In the 2 days since the scrapper controversy had begun, Marlin Technologies had received 3 investor inquiries and 1 firm offer of $10 million. $10 million. For a company that had been invisible a week ago. The scrapper story had put Marlin's name in front of millions of people, and the PR manager's debunking campaign had positioned them as the serious, credible adult in the room. Whether the mech was real or not, the controversy had already paid for itself 100 times over. In the cockpit, Ryan closed his eyes for 1 second. He checked the system. Summon points were climbing at a rate he'd never seen, a vertical line on what had been a flat graph for 14 years. Project 2's progress bar had pushed past 15%. 15. Up from 9 just days ago. The live stream hadn't even started yet, and the sheer volume of people saying his name across every platform was generating points faster than he could track. A thought flickered through his mind: absurd, theatrical, the kind of thing a novelist would write. What if I failed on purpose? Let the mech sit there like a statue. Let the world call me a fraud. Let Marlin have their victory, the skeptics have their vindication. Sink to the absolute bottom. And then, weeks later, when everyone's moved on, come back. A live demonstration. No warning. The ultimate comeback arc. The drama of it was almost irresistible. The summon points from a redemption story would be astronomical. He shook it off. No. That's main character syndrome. I'm an engineer, not a protagonist. Do the job. Ryan pressed the activation switch on his right glove. Click. The cockpit indicators lit up. The touch screen flooded with data green across the board. The neural link engaged, and the familiar pressure settled behind his eyes, down his spine, into his fingertips. Starting now, Ryan said. His voice came through the newly installed speaker bolted to Scrapper's chest plate, a $15 unit from an electronics surplus store, and it sounded like it. Watch closely. He raised his left hand. Below, 23 cameras caught the same thing at the same instant. Scrapper's left arm moved. Not a twitch. Not a shudder. A smooth, deliberate lift, 20 feet of steel rising from Scrapper's side in perfect sync with Ryan's hand, visible in the inset camera feed on Chloe's stream. The arm went up, fingers spreading, the 3-pronged claw opening wide against the ceiling lights. The workshop went silent. Then it went loud. It's oh my god, it's actually, are you seeing this? The self-media reporter's voice cracked on air. His eyes were blank, mouth working on autopilot. Scrapper just moved. It just, his hand went up and the arm went up, and I can't. His colleague wasn't doing better. Ladies and gentlemen, we can confirm Ryan Mercer has moved, and Scrapper has moved with him. It moved. It's real. Is it real? Am I dreaming? Somebody tell me I'm not dreaming. This is unprecedented. This is absolutely unprecedented. A 14-year-old just moved a 40-foot mech with his hand. Tom had his arm around Lisa. Neither of them spoke. They'd known intellectually, logically, that Scrapper worked. They'd seen the aftermath of the first test, the cracked concrete, the video. But watching their son sit inside a machine the size of a building and make it obey his thoughts, live, in front of millions of people. That was different. That was the kind of thing you couldn't prepare for, no matter how many times someone told you it was coming. Against the back wall, Ward had his notebook open but hadn't written anything. His pen was frozen an inch above the page. Beside him, Hartley had one hand pressed flat against his own chest, as if checking that his heart was still beating. Doug, Hartley said quietly. I see it. How? I don't know. Ryan raised his right hand. Scrapper's right arm, the one ending in the excavator bucket, rose to match. He brought both arms up, then down. Rotated the wrists. Opened and closed the claw. Every movement tracked, every gesture answered, the delay so small it was invisible to the naked eye. For a split second, Ryan considered the classic Jaeger pose, both fists meeting at the chest, the salute from the movies. But Scrapper's hands were a 3-fingered claw in a steel bucket. The image of those two mismatched appendages bumping together like a confused handshake was enough to kill the impulse. Instead, he raised the right arm, the claw, and closed it into a fist at chest height. A simpler gesture. Cleaner. "Scrapper," he said through the speaker. "All systems nominal." The cheap speaker made his voice buzz and echo off the sheet metal walls. It sounded like a transmission from somewhere far away. Below him, the workshop erupted. Applause, shouting, Chloe's voice cutting through the noise. The reporters had given up on professionalism entirely. Several were clapping, one was wiping her eyes, and the podcast guy with 400 subscribers was just standing there with his mouth open, holding a microphone that wasn't plugged into anything. In the livestream chats, language had broken down. "I am on the floor. My mom just asked why I'm crying at my laptop. Someone built a mech. A real mech. In a garage. We are watching history. Actual literal history. Save this stream. Ryan Mercer, you absolute psychopath, I love you. The welding kid actually did it. The welding kid actually did it." Chapter 12, Breaking the Internet. Ryan's voice came through the speaker again, cutting through the applause. "Move all cameras to the sides. I'm walking Scrapper toward the main door. Stay clear of the path." The cheering stopped. Reporters looked at each other, then at the 40-foot mech standing 6 feet from them, then scrambled. Camera crews grabbed tripods and hauled them sideways, staking out new angles along the workshop walls. Chloe repositioned her main rig to catch the walk-in profile. The TV crews fought over the spot nearest the door, the best angle for capturing Scrapper's full stride head-on as it approached. The mood had shifted. 5 minutes ago, these people had been content creators chasing a trending topic. Now they moved with the hurried reverence of witnesses who'd realized they were standing inside a moment that would be talked about for decades. Every camera in the room locked on. Ryan took the first step. Boom. The sound was different when you were standing next to it. On video, it was a crack, sharp, percussive, overfast. In person, it was a detonation that started in the floor and traveled up through the soles of your shoes, through your knees, into your gut. The sheet metal walls flexed inward and snapped back. Dust rained from the ceiling joists. Ward pressed his hand to his chest. The vibration was deep enough to feel in his ribs, and at his age, that wasn't a comfortable sensation. But his eyes never left the mech. Because this was the answer. The arm movement had been convincing. Impressive, even. But a sufficiently clever mechanism, hydraulics, pneumatics, some kind of hidden actuator system could theoretically replicate arm movements from a fixed position. Ward had been willing to entertain that possibility. Walking killed it. You could not fake bipedal locomotion at this scale. The balance calculations alone, the real-time center of gravity adjustments needed to keep 30 tons upright on 2 legs while shifting weight from one foot to the other required a control system of extraordinary sophistication. No puppet rig, no hidden cable system, no mechanical trick could produce what he was watching. The physics were too demanding. Scrapper was walking. And Ryan Mercer was making it walk with his mind. Boom. Second step. Another crater punched into the concrete. Cracks spidering outward, joining the first set. Hartley grabbed Ward's arm, not for support but to make sure Ward was processing what he was processing. "Doug. The neural link. I know. It's real. I know. We need to bring him back to MIT. Today. After the demo. Let him finish." Boom. Boom. Third step. Fourth step. Wall. Same as the video. 4 strides and the workshop ran out of room. The power cable reached its limit, swaying behind Scrapper's ankle like a leash. Ryan reversed the walk. 4 steps back. Each one shaking the floor, punching new holes in concrete that was already more rubble than surface. He guided Scrapper to its starting position, the original footprint, marked by the deepest pair of craters, and brought it to a halt. The neural pressure was hitting him hard. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his hands inside the gloves had the fine tremor he recognized from the first test. The stripped-down neural link lacked the stress-dampening subsystems that the movie version of Scrapper had. In the film, Amara could sprint and jump without breaking a sweat because her scavenged neural relay included pressure reduction buffers from a Mark III Jaeger. Ryan's version had none of that. He'd cut every non-essential system to get the link working at all, and the cost was that 8 steps felt like running a marathon in his skull. He killed the link. The cockpit went dark. The pressure vanished, and the relief was so sudden it felt physical, like surfacing after a deep dive, lungs burning, sky wide open above him. Ryan wiped his forehead, unbuckled, and climbed down. The reporters were waiting at the bottom. They swarmed. Every microphone in the building converged on him at once, voices overlapping in a wall of sound. Ryan, can you walk us through? How does the control system? Will you be accepting offers from? Can we get an exclusive? Ryan opened his mouth to respond, but Ward got there first. The professor stepped forward not between Ryan and the reporters, but slightly ahead of him, angling his body to create a barrier. His voice was calm, even, and carried the particular authority of a man who'd spent 30 years running graduate seminars and wasn't about to be talked over by a blogger with a ring light. Thank you, everyone. Today's demonstration is concluded. Ryan has nothing further to share at this time. He paused, letting the words settle. I'd also like to note that the technology demonstrated here today may be subject to classification review. I'd encourage everyone to exercise discretion with their coverage. The room went very quiet. Then a reporter near the back one of the TV crew squinted at Ward and said, loud enough for every mic in the room to pick up. Wait, you're Douglas Ward. From MIT. Silence. Then chaos. MIT is already here. Is this a recruitment visit? Has MIT made an offer? Professor, can you confirm? Are there military applications? Ward's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped half a register. I've said what I came to say. The demonstration is over. Please clear the workshop. The reporters recognized the tone. It was the voice of a man who was no longer making suggestions. A few of them kept shooting. You couldn't fault a journalist for that, but they backed toward the door, collecting equipment, exchanging looks that said, did you get that? Tell me you got that. Ryan stepped up beside Ward. That's it for today. Thanks for coming. They filed out. Reluctantly, hungrily, already composing their pieces. The last one through the door turned back to snap a photo of Scrapper standing in the dim workshop, indicator lights fading, and then they were gone. Ward turned to Ryan the instant the door closed. All right, he said. Now tell me everything. What technology did you actually use? Chapter 13, Eidetic. Ryan looked at Ward with the patience of someone explaining something for the second time. I told you yesterday. The core technology is the neural link. A floating neural connection system that interfaces the pilot's nervous system directly with the mech's control architecture. That's it. That's the secret. Ward shook his head. And I'm telling you respectfully that what you're describing cannot exist. Not at this level of fidelity. The best brain-machine interfaces on the planet can manage gross motor commands with a multi-second delay. What you demonstrated today is real-time, full-body motor translation with sub-millisecond latency. That's not a generational leap. That's impossible. I know. I built it anyway. Ward studied him. The kid wasn't defensive. Wasn't performing. He was just stating facts, the way you'd tell someone the sky was blue. This matters more than you realize, Ward said. Based on what we saw today, Scrapper would almost certainly qualify for a national priority research designation. I can practically guarantee it. Funding, resources, institutional support, all of it. Hartley jumped in. Forget the priority designation. Come to MIT. We'll get the president to authorize a dedicated research program for you. Annual budget north of 10 million. Lab space, graduate assistants, access to every facility on campus. The numbers hung in the air. $10 million a year. For a kid who hadn't started college. In the corner of the workshop, Tom Mercer's mouth had gone slightly slack. Lisa's hand had found his arm. Chloe was staring at the professors like they'd started speaking in tongues. Tom had spent 23 years running a machining shop. In his best year, the business had cleared $140,000 before taxes. $10 million wasn't a number that belonged in his vocabulary. It was the kind of figure that existed in news articles about other people's lives. Hartley wasn't finished. And that's before any defense contracts come into play. If the neural link performs the way it did today under controlled conditions, DARPA will want in. Lincoln Lab will want in. You'll have more funding than you can spend. Ryan let them talk. He'd expected this, had planned for it, in fact, but hearing the actual numbers spoken aloud by two MIT professors standing in his family's workshop was still a surreal experience. Like watching a chess game you'd been playing in your head suddenly manifest on a real board. I appreciate the offer, he said. Both of you. But you still don't believe the neural link is real. We believe something is real, Ward said carefully. We saw Scrapper move. We saw you control it. But the mechanism you're describing. Then test it. Hartley's eyes lit up. Let us try it. Right now. I'll go up there myself. He was already moving toward the ladder. Ryan caught his arm. Professor. The neural link puts significant strain on the nervous system. It's manageable for young, healthy pilots, but the pressure scales with age. For someone your age, the load could cause real neurological damage. Headaches at best. Seizures at worst. Hartley stopped. I'm not that old, he said, with the wounded dignity of a 62-year-old who still ran 5Ks. Old enough that I'm not letting you up there. But here's what I'll propose, you find a volunteer. Someone young, healthy, no neurological conditions. A grad student, an undergrad, I don't care. They come here, they pilot Scrapper under controlled conditions, and you watch the whole thing. Neural link, real-time control, no tricks. And in exchange. Ryan smiled. He'd been waiting for this part. In exchange, I need materials. The neural link is degrading bad materials, limited lifespan. I've got a parts list. Some of it's standard industrial. Some of it requires fabrication capabilities that only exist in the defense industrial sector. I need your help sourcing it. Ward and Hartley looked at each other. Then back at Ryan. Show us the list, Ward said. Ryan's bedroom was exactly what you'd expect from a 14-year-old genius, which is to say it looked like a library had been detonated. Books everywhere. Stacked on the desk, piled on the floor, crammed into shelves that had given up pretending to be organized. Textbooks, technical manuals, reference volumes scattered across every horizontal surface with the casual entropy of someone who consumed information faster than they could file it. Ward picked up the nearest stack and started reading spines. Principles of plasma physics. Laser physics. Solid-state chemistry and its applications. Advanced thermodynamics. Computational fluid dynamics. He put them down and picked up another stack. More of the same doctoral-level material spanning half a dozen disciplines. Physics, chemistry, materials science, computer engineering, biology, mathematics. Not the reading list of a high school student. Not even the reading list of a graduate student. This was the kind of library you'd find in the office of a polymath who'd been working across fields for decades. You read all of these? Ward asked. You think I built a mech with high school physics? Ward laughed. Fair point. Hartley had noticed something else. He was holding a copy of Principles of Thermodynamics for Aerospace Engineers, turning it over in his hands. This book's barely been opened, he said. The spine isn't even cracked. Same with most of these, they look like they've been read once, maybe twice, and tossed aside. Ryan shrugged. Once is enough. Once is enough to learn doctoral-level plasma physics. I have an eidetic memory. I read something once, I know it. Hartley looked at Ward. Ward looked at Hartley. They had the expression of men who'd reached the limit of what they were prepared to believe in one afternoon. Prove it, Hartley said. He grabbed the Aerospace Thermodynamics textbook, flipped to a random page, and read aloud, a stream of air at 1 atmosphere and 20 degrees Celsius with a mass of 1 kilogram undergoes reversible adiabatic mixing with a second stream at 9 atmospheres and 20 degrees Celsius, also 1 kilogram. Find the resulting pressure of the mixed stream. 0.53, Ryan said, without hesitation. Hartley blinked. Show your work. That's the example problem on page 78. Bottom of the page. Hartley looked down. Page 78. Bottom of the page. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Pick another one, Ryan said. They picked another one. Different book, different field in organic chemistry problem. Ryan gave the answer and the page number. They tried a third. A fourth. Each time, Ryan responded instantly, answer first, then the exact location in the text, as if he were reading from a copy of the book projected inside his skull. Ward quizzed him on material outside the book's problems from his own graduate coursework, questions that required cross-disciplinary synthesis. Ryan answered those too, working through the logic at a speed that made Ward feel like he was watching a computer process a query. How? Ward said finally. It wasn't really a question. I don't know, Ryan said. I've been like this as long as I can remember. I've studied my own cognition extensively. MRI, EEG, neuropsych batteries. I've run everything I could get access to. No anomalies. No explanation. My brain just works this way. He tapped his temple. I read it once. I know it forever. That's all I can tell you. Ward sat back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. A 14-year-old. With eidetic memory. Who'd taught himself doctoral-level material across a dozen fields. Who'd built a functioning mech in a backyard workshop. Who'd invented a neural interface that the entire defense industrial complex of the United States hadn't managed to produce. Either the universe was playing an elaborate joke, or he was sitting in front of the most important scientific mind of the 21st century. Ward was not a man who believed in jokes. Chapter 14, The Deal. Ryan pulled up the parts list on his computer, an air-gapped desktop that had never touched the internet in its life. Data transfers were done by hard drive, each one virus scanned before and after use. Paranoid, maybe. But paranoia was cheap, and the schematics on that machine were worth more than anything else in the house. Ward leaned in and started reading. His expression changed within the first 10 lines. By line 30, he'd stopped pretending to be casual about it. Ryan. Some of these components, you're talking about custom-fabricated chip arrays. Military-grade signal processors. Composite housings with thermal tolerances that only 2 or 3 facilities in the country can produce. I know. This isn't a shopping list you fill at a hardware store. Half of these items require coordination with defense contractors. The chip fabrication alone would need. He stopped. Recalculated. The full list. What's the total cost? Ballpark? North of 10 million. Ward sat back. 10 million. The same number Hartley had thrown out 20 minutes ago as an annual research budget. The kid had been sitting there, nodding politely, waiting for them to commit to a number, and now he was handing them the invoice. Hartley saw it too. He barked out a laugh and slapped the desk. You planned this. You sat there and let us make promises, and you had this list ready the whole time. Ryan's expression was the picture of innocence. You said 10 million a year wasn't a problem. I said it wasn't a problem if you came to MIT. So let's make that happen. The room shifted. This was no longer a conversation between professors and a prodigy. This was a negotiation, and the 14-year-old at the desk had been 3 moves ahead since before they walked through the door. Ryan laid it out. The neural link has a limited number of uses left before the circuitry degrades beyond repair. Every activation costs me. I can't afford to waste one on a private demo that convinces 2 people. I need to convince everyone, your administration, your funding committee, whoever signs the checks. He leaned forward. Bring your decision makers here. President, provost, department heads, whoever needs to see it. I'll arrange a live demonstration with a volunteer pilot. One of your students, someone young and healthy. They'll experience the neural link firsthand, and your leadership will see a non-engineer, someone with 0 training, controlling a 40-foot mech in real time. One demonstration, Ward said. You want to bet everything on one shot? I have to. The hardware won't survive many more. Ward and Hartley looked at each other. Ward could see Hartley running the logistics, travel arrangements, who to bring, how to frame the invitation to the university president without sounding insane. We can make that work, Ward said. We'll need a few days to coordinate. Take the time you need. But don't take too long. Hartley stood. We'll call you within 48 hours with a plan. They shook hands, all 3 of them, then Tom and Lisa, who'd been hovering near the door with the dazed energy of parents watching their son negotiate a $10 million research deal over lemonade. Chloe followed the professors to the door, where Lisa caught her arm. Drumsticks are almost ready. God bless this family. Ryan waited until the professor's rental car pulled out of the driveway before checking the system. Project 2, 20%. 20. Up from 9% before the viral video. Up from 15% during the live stream. The aftermath, the clips, the reposts, the arguments, the speculation, the millions of people across every platform saying Ryan Mercer had pushed it another 5 points in a matter of hours. At this rate, the acceleration curve was exponential. Each wave of attention generated more conversation, which generated more points, which meant the next project milestone came faster, which would generate more attention when he revealed it. A flywheel. Spinning faster every day. Ryan closed the system interface and opened his browser. The internet had, predictably, lost its collective mind. The livestream clips had been carved into 100 different cuts and scattered across every platform: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. The fist raise moment. The first step. The reporter's stammering reactions. And, unexpectedly, Ward's intervention. The clip of Ward stepping in front of the cameras and warning reporters about potential classification had gone viral on its own. Within an hour, internet detectives had identified him. MIT, materials science, 20 years of defense-adjacent research, and the implications had sent the comment sections into overdrive. MIT showed up to a garage in Texas to watch a kid pilot a robot. Let that sink in. The professor said. Classification review. Classification. This is going military. 100%. How long until the government blackbags this kid and we never hear about Scrapper again? At least with government backing he won't have to crowdfund the next upgrade. Mechs aren't cheap. Save the livestream archive before it gets taken down for national security. Ryan scrolled past the speculation and found what he was looking for: a comment thread breaking down everything known about Ward and Hartley's research portfolios. Someone had already pulled their publication histories and was drawing connections to DARPA-funded projects. Good. Let them speculate. Every theory, every thread, every breathless take about government involvement and military applications, it all meant more people saying his name. And the system didn't care about the context. He closed the laptop and went to join his family for drumsticks. On the road back to Austin, Ward's phone rang before they'd made it to the highway. The caller ID read, MIT President's Office. Ward put it on speaker. Hartley turned down the radio. Doug. The voice was measured, but the fact that the president of MIT was calling a professor's personal cell on a Saturday afternoon said everything the tone didn't. I'm seeing your face all over the internet. Something about a mech. And a 14-year-old. We were in the area, Ward said. Academic exchange at UT Austin. The kid's demonstration was nearby, so we went to observe. And Ward considered how to phrase what he was about to say to a man who ran one of the most prestigious research institutions on Earth. The mech is real. The control system is real. The kid is. He paused. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've reviewed work from every major lab in the country. What I saw today doesn't fit into any existing framework. Hartley leaned toward the phone. He's also got an eidetic memory. Reads a textbook once, retains the content down to page numbers. We tested him across multiple disciplines. He's operating at a level I've never encountered. A long silence on the other end. How certain are you? Certain enough that I want to bring you down here to see it yourself, Ward said. He's proposed a demonstration neural link test with a volunteer pilot. One shot. He wants our leadership present. Another silence, shorter this time. I'll clear my calendar. Send me a brief. The line went dead. Hartley merged onto the highway. The Texas sun was dropping toward the horizon, painting the flat landscape in shades of copper and gold. Well, he said. That happened. Yep. We're bringing the president of MIT to a garage in Texas. Yep. To watch a 14-year-old's robot. Ward smiled for the first time all day. Yep. Chapter 15, Channels. Yes. He's really that good. Hartley was leaning toward the phone's speaker, talking over Ward for the third time. Ward let him. When Hartley got excited about something, trying to rein him in was like trying to stop a rocket mid-launch. Technically possible, practically pointless. The MIT president's voice came through flat and controlled, which was how Ward knew he was furious. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You two tenured professors, representing this institution, visited an unverified teenager's garage, watched his robot walk around, and then promised him $10 million in annual research funding. Without consulting me. Without consulting the provost. Without consulting anyone. We didn't promise, Ward said carefully. We indicated that the funding would be. You indicated. Wonderful. And if this turns out to be an elaborate hoax? If we're the next headline, MIT professors swindled by teenage con artist? Right now, we're in the middle of admissions season. Do you have any idea what that does to our credibility with prospective students? Hartley jumped in. With all due respect, the only way to settle this is to send a team down here. Put someone in the cockpit. 5 minutes of first-hand experience and you'll know everything you need to know. A long silence. The sound of someone rubbing his temples, probably. I'll arrange it, the president said finally. But if this goes sideways, the two of you can start planning your retirement lectures. And Doug, send me that brief. Encrypted. The line went dead. Ward and Hartley had barely made it back to their borrowed office at UT Austin before the first knock came. Professor Alan Kessler, Mechanical Engineering, UT Austin, mid-60s, wire-rimmed glasses, let himself in without waiting for an answer. He'd been their host for the academic exchange, and he'd clearly been watching the live stream. So, Kessler said, settling into a chair like a man who planned to stay. You two crashed a teenager's live stream and ended up on national television. How was your Saturday? Hartley was already in combative mode. If you're here to poach. Relax, Jim. I'm not poaching anyone. Kessler raised both hands. What I am here to ask is whether there's room for collaboration. If you're standing up a research program around this technology, UT Austin would like to be part of the conversation. The kid is local. His mech is here. It makes sense to have a lab presence in Texas, even if the primary program is at MIT. Hartley opened his mouth. Kessler kept talking. Think about it, the boy grew up here. His workshop is here. His support network is here. Uprooting him to Cambridge might not be the smartest move, developmentally speaking. A joint lab in Texas lets him work in a familiar environment while still being affiliated with MIT. Hartley's response was 2 words, delivered with the diplomatic grace of a man who built rocket engines for a living: not happening. Ward intervened before the conversation caught fire. Alan, we appreciate the interest. But right now, nothing is confirmed. We don't even have institutional buy-in from our own administration yet. Let's get the basics settled before we start talking joint ventures. He paused, then added, and between us, this technology may not be something any single institution can handle alone. Kessler was smart enough to hear what Ward wasn't saying. If the neural link was real, genuinely real, it wouldn't stay in academia. It would go somewhere with a much bigger budget and a much higher security clearance. He nodded and left without pressing further. Back in Cambridge, MIT President Robert Callaway sat in his office reading Ward's encrypted email for the 3rd time. The technical details were dense, but the implications were straightforward. A 14-year-old had built a direct neural mechanical interface that operated in real time with sub-millisecond latency. If verified, it represented a capability that exceeded every known brain-machine interface program in the world by at least 2 decades. Callaway deleted the email. Then he deleted it from his trash folder. Then he picked up his desk phone and dialed a number that wasn't in any directory. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. He did most of the listening. When it was over, he made 3 more calls to the head of Lincoln Laboratory, to the Dean of Engineering, and to a name in the Department of Defense that he kept in a locked drawer rather than his contacts list. The team would be assembled by Monday. Back in Crestfield, Ryan was horizontal on the couch. Chloe occupied the other end, also horizontal, scrolling her phone with one hand and eating grapes with the other. The TV was on but muted. Lisa was in the kitchen doing something that smelled like roast chicken. You know you're famous now, right? Chloe said, not looking up. Like, famous. 2 days ago the internet was calling you a fraud. Now it's calling you a national treasure. The same accounts that were posting debunk threads are posting appreciation posts. Some of them didn't even delete the old ones, they just pretend they never happened. Shocking. And there's a whole conspiracy theory that you are going to be recruited into a secret military program and disappear into some underground bunker in Nevada. Very dramatic. Very you. I'm not disappearing into a bunker. That's exactly what someone who was about to disappear into a bunker would say. Ryan threw a pillow at her. She caught it without looking up, which was impressive. The military will probably take an interest, he said. But Scrapper's direct combat value is limited. It's a prototype built from scrap steel with a 10-use neural link. Nobody's deploying it to a battlefield. What they'll actually care about is the neural link itself. Because it connects brains to machines. Because it connects brains to anything. Mechs, drones, prosthetics, surgical systems, vehicles. The military applications are obvious, but the civilian applications are just as big. Medical, industrial, scientific. It's not a weapon. It's a platform. Chloe was quiet for a moment. So what happens? They'll want to verify it. Then they'll want to fund it. Then they'll want to classify parts of it, but they can't classify the whole thing because I already demonstrated it live on camera in front of 23 journalists and 2 million viewers. That cat's out of the bag. Good. I worked hard on that live stream. I'd be upset if it got classified. Your contribution is noted. My contribution is essential. Without me, you'd still be uploading welding videos to 800 subscribers. Ryan didn't argue, because she was right. The MIT team arrived 2 days later. Ward called ahead to confirm they were on the road, an hour out. Ryan spent the morning running Scrapper's diagnostics one more time, checking cable connections, verifying that the neural link was still functional. Every activation was precious now. 8 uses left after the live stream. He couldn't afford a wasted cycle. They arrived in a convoy of 3 black SUVs, which Ryan thought was a bit much for an academic visit but which made perfect sense once he saw who got out. Ward and Hartley led the group. Behind them came a stream of people who filled the workshop like a small invasion, 20 in total, introduced one by one as they filed through the door. This is Dr. Margaret Holloway, neuroscience, one of the leading researchers in neural interface technology at MIT, Ward said, gesturing to a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd already formed 3 hypotheses and was waiting to disprove them. Dr. Paul Yates, mechanical engineering. Dr. Sandra Friel, biomedical systems. Dr. Richard Keene, electrical engineering and signal processing. The introductions kept coming. 13 professors and senior researchers, spanning every discipline that might conceivably be relevant to a neural-controlled mech, neuroscience, materials science, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, biomechanics, computer science, even a psychologist. And these, Ward said, turning to the last 7 members of the group, are our volunteer test subjects. All in excellent physical condition. If one doesn't take to the link, we've got backups. Ryan shook hands with each of them. Firm grips. Direct eye contact. The kind of posture you didn't learn in a classroom. They'd introduced themselves with first names only, no titles, no affiliations. They were polite, alert, and carried themselves with the particular economy of movement that came from years of physical training. Ryan didn't need Ward to tell him what they were. He recognized the bearing. These weren't graduate students. He glanced at the 13 professors and quietly re-evaluated. If the test subjects were military, then at least some of the academics were too, or were here on someone's behalf who wasn't in the room. That was fine. Expected, even. The phone call Calloway had made from his office had clearly reached the right people. The pieces were moving faster than Ryan had anticipated. But they were moving in the right direction. All right, Ryan said, looking up at Scrapper. Let's get started. Chapter 16, No Choice But to Believe. Dr. Holloway didn't waste time. Her team had spent 20 minutes circling Scrapper, examining joints, tapping welds, photographing cable runs, and muttering to each other in the shorthand of people who'd spent decades in adjacent fields. Now she stood in front of Ryan with the directness of someone who'd flown 1,000 miles to see one thing and intended to see it immediately. We'd like to start the test. Can you power up? Absolutely. Ryan turned to the 7 volunteers lined up against the wall. He pointed at the second man from the left, early 20s, medium build, steady eyes. No particular reason for the choice. They all looked capable. You. What's your name? Garrett. Garrett. Have a seat. Ryan gestured to a chair positioned in front of Scrapper, the same chair Tom had found him sitting in the night he'd run the first neural link test. A lifetime ago. The chair faced the mech at ground level, well clear of the feet. Garrett sat. Back straight, hands on his knees. The posture of someone who'd been trained to be ready for anything and was currently applying that training to sitting in a folding chair in a garage in Texas. Relax, Ryan said. This part isn't dangerous. He handed Garrett the sensor gloves, then fitted the headband, a thin strip of sensor-studded fabric that sat across the forehead and temples. It looked like a sweatband from a discount sporting goods store. It did not look like the kind of device that connected a human nervous system to a 40-foot mech. The MIT team watched every step with the intensity of surgeons observing an unfamiliar procedure. Holloway leaned toward one of her colleagues, a younger researcher with a tablet, and spoke quietly. Non-invasive contact sensors. No implanted electrodes, no subdural arrays. The signal acquisition method is. I don't recognize it. The closest analog would be high-density EEG, but that can't achieve this kind of motor resolution without. She stopped herself. No point theorizing before the data came in. Ryan walked the group through the safety protocols. He spoke clearly, without rushing. addressing both Garrett and the professors simultaneously. When I say go, press the button on the right glove. The neural link will activate. You'll feel pressure all over, like being underwater. It's the neural load of the connection. If it becomes unbearable, pull off either glove. The safety system will kill the link immediately. He paused. Made eye contact with Garrett. This is a preliminary test only. I've activated Scrapper in test mode. The neural link and the right arm are live. Everything else is locked out. You won't be controlling the legs, the torso, or anything else. Just the right hand. Understood. Understood. Good. Ryan walked to the generator and started it. The diesel rumbled to life, and Scrapper's indicator lights began their climb, but only partially. A subset of the usual constellation lit up, tracing the right arm and the cockpit systems. The rest stayed dark. Test mode. Contained. Safe. Ryan returned to Garrett's side. Ready. Ready. Go. Garrett pressed the button. For a second, nothing visible happened. Then Garrett inhaled sharply, a sudden, involuntary breath, the kind a person takes when they step into cold water. His shoulders tensed. His jaw tightened. Talk to me, Ryan said. Pressure. Garrett's voice was steady but quieter than before. Like you said. All over. Bearable. Holloway was already in motion. She crouched beside Garrett, fingers on his wrist, eyes on her watch. Two of the other volunteers had produced portable monitoring equipment, a pulse oximeter, a blood pressure cuff, a handheld EEG reader, and were attaching sensors to Garrett's free hand and temples with practiced efficiency. The readings came fast. Heart rate elevated 72 to 89. Blood pressure up. Cortisol markers consistent with moderate physiological stress. The EEG readout showed activity patterns that Holloway had never seen before, not pathological, not normal, just different. Unfamiliar waveforms in the motor cortex and prefrontal regions. She looked at the data. Looked at Garrett. Looked at Ryan. Said nothing. Kept watching. All right, Garrett, Ryan said. Make a fist with your right hand. Garrett clenched his fist. Above them, 30 feet up, Scrapper's right hand answered. The three-pronged claw closed into a fist with a grinding shriek of steel on steel. 20 feet of articulated arm, responding to a thought from a man sitting in a folding chair on the ground, connected by nothing more than a pair of gloves and a headband. The workshop went silent. Garrett stared up at the claw. His mouth was slightly open. He was a man who'd been trained not to show surprise, and he was showing surprise. Again, Ryan said. 3 times. Garrett opened and closed his fist. 1. 2. 3. Each time, Scrapper's claw responded in perfect sync. Open, close, the delay invisible, the tracking precise. Holloway stood up slowly. She was holding the EEG readout and looking at it the way a geologist looks at a rock that shouldn't exist in the stratum where they found it. The motor signal isn't going through a conventional pathway, she said, half to herself. There's no processing delay consistent with surface-level electrode acquisition. The signal is, it's as if the gloves are reading the motor intent directly, premotor cortex, before the signal even reaches the hand muscles. She looked at Ryan. How? That's the neural link. That's not an answer. It's the only one I'm giving right now. Holloway's jaw tightened. But she nodded. The data was the data, and the data said this was real. The ground test took 15 minutes. 3 rounds of fist clenching, 2 rounds of individual finger articulation, a wrist rotation sequence. Every command tracked. Every response was clean. Garrett reported the neural pressure as manageable, like a bad headache that doesn't get worse. Ryan disconnected him, moved the sensor equipment back up to the cockpit, and turned to the group. Ready for the full test? Nobody said no. Garrett climbed the ladder. Ryan climbed behind him, walking him through the cockpit setup: vest, pedals, straps, gloves, headband. The full rig. No test mode this time. Everything live. The legs work on the foot pedals, Ryan explained. Sliding motion on the rails. Don't go too fast. Scrapper's balance system is rudimentary, and the frame can't handle high-speed locomotion. Think of it like walking on ice. Slow, deliberate steps. And if I lose balance? Red button above your forehead. Emergency stabilization and shutdown. Hit it and Scrapper locks its joints and powers down. You'll feel the link cut immediately. Garrett nodded. Strapped in. Pulled on the gloves. Ryan climbed back down and cleared the floor. The professors retreated to the walls. Cameras the team had brought their own recording equipment were positioned at 4 angles. All clear, Ryan called up. Whenever you're ready. Garrett activated the link. The full neural load hit him like a wave, deeper, heavier, more encompassing than the chair test. His vision narrowed for a moment before stabilizing. The touch screen in front of him flooded with data. Green across the board. He raised both arms. Scrapper's arms rose with him. Below, the MIT team watched in absolute silence. Holloway had her EEG reader connected to a wireless feed from the cockpit sensors, monitoring Garrett's neural activity in real time. The readings were extraordinary motor cortex activity synchronized with the mech's movements at a latency she couldn't measure with her equipment. Either it was below 1 millisecond, or the signal pathway was something her instruments weren't designed to detect. Garrett stepped. Boom. Concrete shattered. The floor shuddered. Several professors grabbed the wall. Boom. Second step. Garrett was moving carefully, feeling his way, the way you'd walk through a dark room, each foot placed deliberately, weight committed only after he was sure of the balance. Boom. Boom. Third and fourth steps. Wall. He reversed. 4 steps back. Slow, controlled, the mech swaying slightly on each transition but never tipping, the balance system fighting for equilibrium with every stride. Garrett brought Scrapper to a halt at the starting position. Killed the link. Sat in the cockpit for a long moment, breathing hard, hands trembling. Then he looked down at the cluster of professors staring up at him. That, he said, was the most insane thing I've ever done. And I've jumped out of helicopters. Ryan met the professors at the base of the ladder as Garrett climbed down. Ward was the first to speak. The skepticism was gone. What replaced it wasn't belief, exactly, it was the stunned, recalibrating expression of a man whose model of reality had just been revised. How did you build this? He asked. Not the polite version of the question he'd asked before. The real one. You're 14 years old. You haven't attended a single day of university. The technology in that cockpit doesn't correspond to any existing research program on Earth. How? Ryan looked at him steadily. I told you the truth from the beginning, Professor. The neural link is real. I built it. I understand if that's hard to accept, but the data your team just collected should make the point better than anything I can say. Ward turned to Holloway. Margaret. Holloway was holding her tablet like a shield. Her face had the particular blankness of someone processing too much information to express any of it. The readings are consistent with a genuine neural mechanical interface operating at a fidelity level that I would have said was impossible 48 hours ago. She paused. I need to study the device itself. The sensor array, the signal processing, the transmission pathway, all of it. This isn't something I can evaluate from external data alone. That can be arranged, Ryan said. Once we have an agreement. Ward and Holloway exchanged a look. The kind of look that said, this kid just negotiated us into a corner, and he's not even old enough to drive. Ward turned back to Ryan. You'll have your agreement. Chapter 17, Bidding War. Ryan had been expecting this part. Before the professors could start their goodbyes, he pulled a portable hard drive from his pocket and tossed it lightly in his palm. Neural link theory. Foundational principles and a design overview. Nothing classified, nothing that lets you build one, but enough for your team to understand what they just witnessed and start formulating research questions. He held it out. Holloway reached for it. Ryan pulled it back half an inch. Once we have an agreement. Ward chuckled. You've been carrying that in your pocket this whole time, haven't you? I like to be prepared. Ward looked at the other professors, then back at Ryan. Listen, we believe you. The test was definitive. But the people who sign the checks weren't in the room today. Getting institutional approval, funding authorization, lab allocation, that takes time. We're talking about a research program unlike anything MIT has stood up before. There's no template for this. Hartley, who usually ran hot, was unusually gentle. What Doug's saying is that this situation is unprecedented. In the entire history of MIT, no one has ever done what you've done at your age. There's no existing process for recruiting a 14-year-old with technology that exceeds every national defense program. We're building the process as we go. How long? A couple of days. Maybe 3. We'll call you the second we have something concrete. Ryan handed over the hard drive. Holloway took it like it was made of glass. The group started filing out. Ward paused at the door, turned back, and said something Ryan hadn't expected. Your workshop isn't secure. Ryan looked at him. Sheet metal walls. A padlock. No surveillance, no perimeter. You've got technology in this building that foreign intelligence services would kill to access, and your security is a combination lock from a hardware store. Ward nodded toward the 6 remaining volunteers. They're staying. Ryan blinked. Excuse me. 4 in the workshop. 2 with you. Around the clock until we get the formal arrangement in place. Ryan looked at the 6 men. They looked back with the patient neutrality of people who'd already received their orders and were waiting for the civilian to catch up. Their food, Ryan started, is not your problem. They're provisioned. And if your timeline slips and this takes longer than a couple of days. Ward was already walking. Then they stay longer. Good night, Ryan. The convoy of black SUVs pulled away. Ryan stood in the driveway and watched them go, then turned around to find 2 of the 6 soldiers flanking him at a respectful distance. One would be in the living room. One on the roof. The roof. Ryan looked up at his own house. His parents' house. A 3-bedroom ranch in Crestfield, Texas, with a patchy lawn and a mailbox that leaned slightly to the left. And now it had a trained soldier on the roof. He went inside. Tom and Lisa came home from the shop 40 minutes later. Tom opened the front door, stepped into the hallway, and found a man sitting in his living room who was not his son, was not his wife, and was built like a refrigerator with a crew cut. What in the... Dad. Dad. It's fine. Ryan appeared from the kitchen, hands raised in the universal gesture of please don't have a heart attack. It took 10 minutes to explain. Tom and Lisa sat on the couch, processing the information with the dazed concentration of people being told their house was now a military installation. So the government, Tom said slowly, sent soldiers. To our house. To protect. Ryan. To protect Scrapper and the technology. I'm included by proximity. Lisa was already past the shock and into the implications. If the government is sending soldiers to protect it, then it's real. It's really real. I mean, I knew it was real, I saw it move, but this is... the president of MIT called on a Saturday and cleared his calendar. Real, Ryan said. Yet. Tom leaned back on the couch. He was a machinist from Crestfield, Texas. He fixed things for a living. His biggest professional achievement was a custom camshaft he'd milled for a ranch owner's vintage Mustang. And now there was a man on his roof. The next day passed without a call from Ward. Ryan checked his phone every hour. Nothing. He called Ward in the afternoon. We're working on it. Almost there. Sit tight. And resigned himself to waiting. The soldiers were professional and invisible. The 4 in the workshop stayed in the workshop. The 2 assigned to Ryan rotated shifts without being asked. They ate MREs from a supply bag and declined Lisa's offer of pot roast with the polite firmness of people under specific dietary orders. Lisa was offended. Tom thought it was hilarious. What did arrive, unexpectedly, was Chloe bearing news that Ryan hadn't been tracking. Someone else wants to buy Scrapper, she announced, letting herself in through the back door to avoid the soldier at the front. Ryan was lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling, phone on his chest. Pass. You don't even know who it is. Don't care. I'm not selling. It's Apex Heavy Industries. They make construction equipment, excavators, cranes, earth movers. Their CEO is apparently on a plane to Texas right now. Ryan sat up. A construction equipment company wants to buy my mech. They think Scrapper is an industrial machine. Because of the excavator bucket hand. Chloe was grinning. You know YouTube has been calling Scrapper a construction mech for a week, right? There's a whole meme about it. Someone edited your test video to include a hard hat on Scrapper and a job application for a demolition company. They think my Jaeger-class neural-linked combat platform is a backhoe. A very large, very expensive backhoe. They're offering $50 million. $50 million. Ryan had to admit for a fraction of a second the number landed. That was real money. More than Tom would earn in 3 lifetimes. More than the workshop, the house, and everything the Mercers owned put together, multiplied by 10. But it wasn't enough. Not for what came next. Tell them no. They're already in the air, Ryan. Then they can enjoy the flight. I'm not meeting with them and I'm not selling. Chloe shrugged, started to put her phone away, then stopped. Her eyes went wide. Oh. Oh, this is good. What? Meridian Motors just made a counter-offer. $100 million. Ryan stared at her. Meridian. The electric vehicle company. Yep. The people who make sedans and pickup trucks want to buy a 40-foot neural-linked mech. Apparently they see synergies with their electric drivetrain platform. Chloe was reading from her phone, mouth twitching. They posted it publicly. Their official Twitter account just announced a $100 million bid for Scrapper and tagged you. Ryan took the phone. Read the post. Read the comments. Meridian Motors buying a mech? Are they pivoting to giant robots? 2020 is officially the wildest year on record. This makes me think of that company that offered $500,000 a week ago, LMAO. Remember them? What company? Exactly. Imagine being the Marlin Technologies PR guy right now. You tried to debunk a real mech for clout and now your company doesn't even have a Twitter account anymore. Someone check on the Marlin CEO, he's not okay. Ryan scrolled past. The Marlin comments were everywhere. The internet had turned Marlin Technologies into a punchline. Their corporate accounts had been deleted. Their blog post had been archived and reposted as a cautionary tale about premature debunking. The PR manager who'd orchestrated the whole campaign had reportedly been fired, though no one could confirm it because Marlin had gone completely dark. Ryan almost felt sorry for them. The operative word being almost. Tell Meridian no, he said, handing the phone back. $100 million, Ryan. I know what it's worth. The answer is no. Chloe caught his eye. She'd known him long enough to read the calculation happening behind the flat expression, not indecision, but confirmation. He'd already decided before either offer arrived. The mech wasn't for sale at any price, because selling it ended the story, and the story was what generated the points. Your loss, she said, pocketing her phone. I would have taken the $100 million and retired to Hawaii. You're 17. Early retirement. Very trendy. Ryan lay back down and stared at the ceiling. His phone was silent. Ward still hadn't called. Somewhere out there, a construction company CEO was on a plane to Texas to buy a robot he thought was a fancy excavator. An electric car company had publicly committed $100 million to a technology it didn't understand. Marlin Technologies was a smoking crater. And 6 soldiers were guarding a sheet metal workshop in Crestfield while the president of MIT cleared his calendar. All because a kid built a robot in his garage and put the video on YouTube. Ryan closed his eyes and waited for the phone to ring. Chapter 18, Sell it if you have to. The idea hit Ryan like a spark. Post something on my Twitter, he said. One line. Looking forward to working together. Chloe looked at him. You just told me you're not selling. You told me you're not even meeting with them. Now you want to look forward to working together. Ryan gave her a flat look. That message isn't for them. Then who? She stopped. Thought about it. Grinned. Oh. Oh. Just post it. She posted it. The internet, which had been tracking the bidding war like a spectator sport, immediately assumed Ryan had accepted Meridian Motors' $100 million offer. The reaction was instantaneous and deafening. He said yes. Wait, looking forward to working together, that's gotta be Meridian, right? They're the highest bid. Could be Apex too, they were first. Bro just became a $100 millionaire at 14. I can't even get a summer job. The CEO of Apex Heavy Industries, currently in a rental car somewhere between the Austin airport and Crestfield, received the news mid-drive. His secretary showed him the tweet. He's accepting Meridian's offer. Unclear, sir. The wording is ambiguous. Then call the girl. The one who manages his accounts. The secretary called Chloe. It rang out. Called again. Rang out. Called a third time. Chloe looked at the screen, silenced it, and went back to eating grapes. On the other end, the CEO stared at his phone with the dawning realization that he'd flown halfway across Texas to buy a robot from a teenager who wasn't answering his calls. The real target of the tweet called 9 minutes later. Ryan picked up before the second ring. What are you doing? Ward sounded like a man who'd been in meetings for 48 straight hours and had just watched his entire negotiating position get undermined by a 14-year-old social media post. What do you mean? The tweet, Ryan. The bidding war. Someone flagged it to me 10 minutes ago. You're entertaining corporate offers. Well, we're running low on groceries. Figured selling a mech might help cover the food bill. A long silence. Ryan could practically hear Ward pressing his fingers against his temples. The agreement is almost done. We've been in discussions non-stop. MIT administration, affiliated labs, funding committees, and several other parties I can't name on an open line. This is not a simple process. But we are close. How close? Tonight. By tonight I will have something to show you. Can you please not sell $100 million piece of technology to an electric car company before I get there? Clock's ticking, Professor. The line went dead. Ryan looked at Chloe. Chloe looked at Ryan. You're terrifying, she said. Thank you. That wasn't a compliment. I'm choosing to take it as one. She threw a grape at him. He caught it and ate it. Meanwhile, the Apex CEO arrived at the Mercer house to find two soldiers blocking the front door. He was a large man, 6'2", silver-haired, the kind of executive presence that made boardrooms go quiet. He was not accustomed to being stopped at doors. I'm here to see Ryan Mercer. I have a business proposal. The soldiers didn't move. Mr. Mercer isn't receiving visitors at this time. I flew from Houston specifically for this meeting. Understood, sir. Mr. Mercer isn't receiving visitors at this time. The CEO's secretary, who was slightly more perceptive than his boss, had noticed the soldiers bearing the haircuts, the posture, the way they stood. He pulled the CEO aside and whispered. The CEO's face went through several stages of realization, none of them pleasant. He looked at the soldiers again. Looked at the house. Looked at the workshop behind it. Get me back to the airport, he said quietly. You didn't compete with the federal government for a piece of technology. Not if you plan to keep your government contracts. Online, the bidding war had escalated beyond anything Ryan had expected. After his tweet, every major industrial player in the country had smelled blood in the water. Offers piled up faster than Chloe could track them. Consolidated Industries, $150 million, plus a 10-year engineering contract with a minimum $1 million annual salary upon turning 18. Pinnacle Manufacturing, $170 million, plus establishment of a dedicated mech R&D division with $10 million annual funding, plus an immediate $5 million brand ambassador deal. Atlas Automotive, $190 million. Vanguard Aerospace, $200 million. Even entertainment agencies had jumped in, talent management firms waving signing bonuses, promising endorsement deals, acting roles, talk show appearances. One agency offered to make Ryan the face of American innovation with a multimedia campaign spanning TV, streaming, and social media. The comment sections had devolved into a mixture of awe, comedy, and existential crisis. My teacher said knowledge is power. Turns out knowledge is $200 million and a talent agent. I want to go back to school and study mech engineering. Does anyone offer that major? Nobody offers that major because there's exactly one person on earth qualified to teach it and he's 14. Has anyone noticed that stock prices for companies with Mercer in the name have gone up 12%? The stock market is literally insane. Boxing-related stocks are up too because Scrapper sounds like a boxing name. Wall Street is a casino. Ward saw all of it. So did everyone in the video conference he'd been trapped in for 2 days. The discussion had been going in circles: funding structures, security clearances, intellectual property frameworks, institutional affiliations. 20 people on a call, each with opinions, each with constituencies to protect. The kind of meeting that produced documents instead of decisions. The tweet changed the math. If a private company acquires this technology before we formalize an agreement, Ward said to the group, the cost of getting it back into the institutional pipeline increases by an order of magnitude. We're not the only people who understand what the neural link is worth. Right now, every defense contractor and industrial conglomerate in the country is circling. We have maybe 24 hours before one of them makes an offer that Ryan can't refuse. He's 14. He can't sign a contract. His father can. And his father just watched a parade of companies offer 9 figures for something he helped build in his backyard. How long do you think that man is going to wait? The meeting produced a decision in 45 minutes. A record, by institutional standards. Ward downloaded the proposal to his laptop, grabbed his car keys, and drove to Crestfield for the third time that week. He arrived at the Mercer house just after 8 p.m. Ryan met him at the door with the grin of someone who'd been expecting this exact outcome at this exact time. Ward looked at the grin, sighed, set his laptop on the desk in Ryan's bedroom, opened the document. "I got you what you wanted," he said. "All of it." Chapter 19, Terms. Ward opened the laptop. "Here's the broad strokes," he said. "First, the materials list you gave us. Everything on it. Guaranteed." Ryan nodded. That alone was worth the wait. The neural link rebuild, the upgraded actuators, the custom chip arrays, all the components that had been out of reach were now on the table. Second, and this is where it gets unusual, MIT isn't recruiting you directly. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Your profile is complicated. You're 14, you're the most famous teenager in the country, and I'll be blunt, you have a personality that the administration described as not conducive to institutional integration. They think I'm difficult. They think you'd last about 3 days before you told a department head to go to hell and ended up on the news." Ryan grinned. "They're not wrong. Which is why the structure looks like this. A defense contractor affiliated with MIT's research ecosystem will establish a dedicated project, with initial funding of $10 million. MIT contributes separately $3 million in supplementary funding as an academic partner. You work within the project while enrolled at MIT as a student. When the initial funding runs out, you apply for the next round based on demonstrated results. $10 million to start," Ryan said. "That's tight." "It's tight because the materials list is being sourced separately. The $10 million is operational budget, lab equipment, personnel, facilities. The expensive stuff on your list is already being procured through defense industrial channels. That's not coming out of the project budget." Ryan recalculated. With the materials handled independently, $10 million in operational funding was more than workable. Especially with MIT's $3 million on top. "Not bad," he said. "You're welcome," Ward said dryly. "Now you're going to ask about exam scores." "I wasn't, actually. You should. This entire arrangement is predicated on you getting into MIT through legitimate admissions. Can you?" Ryan looked at Ward the way you'd look at someone who'd asked if water was wet. "Professor. I have an eidetic memory, doctoral level knowledge across 12 disciplines, and I built a functioning mech in my garage. I think I can handle the SATs." Ward held up his hands. "Just checking." The conversation should have ended there. It didn't. "One more thing," Ryan said. "Actually, several more things." Ward's expression shifted to the particular resignation of a man who'd learned that one more thing from Ryan Mercer meant at least 20 minutes of additional negotiation. "All research results and progress milestones I decide when they're made public. Timing, format, channels. My call. As long as I don't leak classified technical details, I have full authority to film, document, and publicize my work however I want." Ward stared at him. "You want media rights? I want the ability to keep my name in the public conversation. If I disappear into a classified lab for 5 years and nobody hears from me, that doesn't serve anyone's interests. Especially mine," Ryan didn't add. "The summon points required visibility. No visibility, no points. No points, no Project 3. And patents," Ryan continued. "The neural link and every other technology currently on Scrapper, I developed those independently, with my own resources, before any institutional involvement. Any future technology I develop within the project where I'm the primary contributor, I want shared patent ownership, with commercial licensing rights retained on my side." Ward set down his pen. "Ryan. You're asking a defense contractor to share patent rights with a teenager. I'm asking a defense contractor to share patent rights with the person who invented the technology they're funding. There's a difference. The standard arrangement is that project-funded research produces project-owned IP. The standard arrangement assumes the researcher shows up with nothing. I'm showing up with a working neural interface and a 40-foot mech. That's not nothing. That's the entire reason this project exists." Ward looked at the ceiling for a long time. Then he pulled a USB drive from his pocket and set it on the desk. "The preliminary cooperation framework is on here. Review it tonight. Tomorrow morning, their legal team will call you to negotiate the specifics." He stood up. "You know," he said at the door, when I came to Texas for an academic exchange, I expected to attend some seminars, eat some barbecue, and fly home. Instead, I've spent 2 weeks negotiating a defense contract with a child who outmaneuvers me at every turn. I appreciate your flexibility, Professor. Good night, Ryan. The legal call came at 9 the next morning. Ryan took it in his bedroom. Chloe was on the floor beside his bed, playing a mobile game with the sound on, her character dying repeatedly to what sounded like a low-level enemy. Ryan ignored her. The negotiation took 2 hours. By the end, both sides had a framework they could live with. The project would be formally designated as Small-Scale Single-Pilot Mech Research and Development Bureaucratic Language for Make Scrapper Better. All technologies developed within the project where Ryan was the primary contributor would be CO patented between Ryan and the contracting entity. Commercial licensing rights stayed with Ryan. He could take any CO patented technology to market with the contractor's consent, retaining 80% of direct revenues. The contractor got 20% of direct revenues and full rights to use all project technologies in their own non-civilian products, meaning military applications were theirs to deploy without royalties. Both parties had veto power over technology transfers to third parties. Both had confidentiality obligations. Neither could share technical details without the other's consent. It wasn't a perfect deal. In a normal world, one where a scientist was an employee drawing a salary, these terms would never have been approved. But this wasn't a normal world. The scientist in question had arrived with mature, functional technology that didn't exist anywhere else on Earth. He wasn't applying for a job. He was bringing the product and negotiating terms for its continued development. The contractor's negotiators understood this. They didn't like it, but they understood it. Ryan could live with the consent requirement on commercialization. As his influence grew, as each project got bigger and more public, the contractor would have less and less reason to block civilian applications. Technologies like holographic displays had far more value in consumer markets than on a battlefield. When the time came, the math would speak for itself. The deal was signed electronically by noon. By the following week, a company called Aegis Industrial had been formally established as the project's corporate vehicle. MIT contributed its $3 million. The defense contractor funded the rest. Equipment procurement began immediately. And 3 days after that, a convoy of flatbed trucks pulled up outside the Mercer house. They were there for her scrapper. Ryan stood in the driveway and watched a crane crew begin the process of extracting a 40-foot mech skeleton from a sheet metal workshop that had never been designed to hold anything larger than a riding mower. The operation took 4 hours, required the partial disassembly of the workshop's rear wall, and drew a crowd of neighbors who filmed the entire thing on their phones. Scrapper, horizontal on a flatbed, strapped down with industrial chains, rolled out of Crestfield, Texas, for the first time in its existence. Ryan watched it go. It would arrive at a proper facility within 48 hours, climate-controlled, reinforced flooring, restricted access. A real lab. With real materials. And a budget that didn't require his father to mortgage the house. He went back inside. Sat on the couch. Opened the system. Project 2, 24%. Still climbing. Chapter 20, New Ground. The disassembly took all day. Ryan supervised every step, tagging components as they came apart, directing the crew on which joints to disconnect first, which cable bundles to coil separately, which structural members could be stacked and which needed individual crating. Scrapper didn't come apart easy. 40 feet of steel skeleton, built over 2 years in a workshop that was never designed for extraction, had to be reduced to a few dozen labeled sections small enough to fit on flatbed trucks. By late afternoon, the last piece was loaded. 12 trucks lined the street outside the Mercer house, each one carrying a numbered fragment of what had been, until this morning, the only functioning mech on Earth. A camera crew from a national news network had been filming the entire process. Ward mentioned something about documentary footage, possible future use. Ryan let them shoot. More cameras meant more coverage. More coverage meant more people saying his name. MIT's official account posted a single statement. MIT is pleased to announce a research partnership with Ryan Mercer to establish a dedicated project for the study and advancement of single-pilot mech technology. The prototype mech, Scrapper, is being relocated to university facilities. We look forward to the work ahead. Simple. Clean. The internet did the rest. Scrapper is going to MIT. This is not a drill. Years of welding videos. Years of people calling him a fraud. And now he's got an MIT research lab. Unreal. Interesting that it's a university project and not military. Means we'll actually get to see updates instead of it disappearing into a black site. Go back and watch his old welding videos. Day 1 through day 100 plus. Nobody believed in him. The comments are all jokes and mockery. And he just kept going. That's what a genius looks like. One comment stood out from the rest. Meridian Motors' official Twitter account had posted a single word and an image. Liars. Crying emoji. The replies were merciless. The internet had zero sympathy for a company that had publicly committed $100 million and gotten played by a 14-year-old's ambiguous tweet. Dinner that night was quiet in a way the Mercer house hadn't been in weeks. No reporters outside. No soldiers in the living room. No phone buzzing with interview requests or corporate buyout offers. Just the three of them at the kitchen table, eating Lisa's pot roast, talking about what came next. Lisa ran through her checklist. Be polite. Don't antagonize the professors. Remember that being smart doesn't mean you're always right. Call home at least twice a week. Eat something green occasionally. Tom kept it shorter. Don't get too big for your britches. Don't look down on anybody. And don't forget where you started. Ryan listened. Nodded. Meant it. He'd be flying out tomorrow. First time leaving Crestfield in 14 years of this life. First time leaving Texas, period. Everything he'd built so far, he'd built within a 50-foot radius of this kitchen table. Now the radius was about to expand dramatically. Ryan landed at Logan International the next morning, hours ahead of the truck convoy carrying Scrapper. Ward met him at the airport with a university car and a schedule that started immediately. First stop, the dormitory. A standard single room, nothing special. Ryan dropped his bag on the bed and didn't linger. Second stop, the lab. Ward and President Calloway walked Ryan across campus, past the main quad, down a tree-lined path that curved behind the engineering complex, to a cleared area at the base of a wooded hill. What had apparently been an open field was now surrounded by corrugated metal fencing. Behind the fence, two prefabricated buildings sat side by side, freshly assembled and smelling like new paint and industrial adhesive. The larger building was enormous. Nearly 60 feet tall, 100 feet wide, close to 10,000 square feet of interior space. A workshop on a completely different scale from the sheet metal garage in Crestfield. This was where Scrapper would be reassembled and where all physical testing would take place. The smaller building, 3 stories, housed offices, a theory lab, and break rooms. Ryan looked at the 2 blue and white prefab structures. They looked like construction site trailers that had been scaled up by a factor of 10. Not a single element of the design could be described as cutting-edge or futuristic or even moderately attractive. President Calloway, Ryan said. With all due respect, if someone didn't know what we were doing here, they'd think this was a temporary housing project for a highway construction crew. Lisa, standing behind him, quietly swatted his arm. Calloway laughed. We built these in 11 days. You wanted the project to start immediately, and this is what immediately looks like. The equipment inside is what matters, and some of it was pulled from active research programs on 48 hours notice. He paused. Of course, if you'd prefer a purpose-built facility, we can commission one. The cost would come out of the project budget. Ryan's expression shifted instantly. The prefabs are perfect. Excellent work. Very utilitarian. I admire the efficiency. Free lab, good. Lab paid for with project money, bad. Ryan had learned this math early and intended to apply it consistently. He pushed through the smaller door cut into the workshop's main gate and stepped inside. The first thing he saw was the gantry crane. 2 massive steel frames, one on each side of the workshop, connected by a horizontal beam that spanned the full width of the building. A motorized hoist unit sat on the beam, capable of lifting and positioning multi-ton components anywhere in the workspace. The kind of equipment that turned a 2-day assembly job into a 2-hour one. Ryan stared at it for a long, appreciative moment. Back in Crestfield, every time he'd needed to move a heavy component, he'd had to hire an external crane, wait for scheduling, and burn half a day on logistics. The gantry crane alone was worth the move. Beyond the crane, the workshop floor was covered with equipment. Machining stations, welding rigs, diagnostic terminals, materials testing setups. Ryan walked through them quickly, cataloging. The basics were all here. Nothing flashy, but functional across every discipline he'd need. Callaway followed behind him. Most of the heavy equipment was provided by Aegis Industrial. They've also assigned a 20-person technical crew to support you. Fabrication, assembly, testing. You handle the theory and design. They handle the physical work. Ryan's face lit up. A full support crew. No more solo assembly sessions at 3 in the morning, wrestling 40-pound actuator housings into place with nothing but a ratchet and spite. Their salaries, Callaway added, come out of the project budget. Ryan's face dimmed slightly. Free crew, good. Crew funded by project money, less good. But acceptable. 20 skilled technicians meant work that would have taken him months alone could be done in weeks. He stood in the center of the workshop, looked up at the gantry crane, looked around at the equipment, and thought about the truck convoy currently crossing state lines with 40 feet of disassembled mech strapped to its beds. In Crestfield, he'd built a dream out of steel and stubbornness and his father's savings account. Here, he was going to build the future.
Additionally, if you would like to request novels and access my Google Drive where I have 200+ audiobooks, then you can join my Patreon. Link is also provided in the description.